Yeah. I'd like to call the meeting to order if everybody's here. And first order of business, do I announce this conference with closed session, or we do this first? It's written down. We have a pledge of allegiance. Okay, well, welcome. Roll call will show that everybody is here, and I also wanted to make an announcement that the newspaper today printed a story about a mural that is up for consideration in front of the Planning Commission, and that is not happening at this meeting in this building at this time. It's actually, if you came to hear about the mural, it's down the street at the community center. It's the next building along, so in case anybody was here for that, that's where you should be. So let me see, I guess I should report out on the closed session. Basically, we
do the approval of the agenda.
Yeah, we basically conferred and
Approval of the agenda?
sorry? Approval of the agenda, yeah. I'm doing the, I don't have to report out over closed session? Yeah. Oh, I see it down here, I'm sorry. So do I hear a approval of the agenda?
Mayor, if I could just move number 4, just for the appropriateness of having our budget considered and adopted this evening after 3 public hearings as part of the regular agenda, no particular issues involved from my side.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other concerns with the agenda? And I would entertain a motion.
And so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion Weinsoff, second Bragman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now I'll do the closed session thing. Basically, we were in conference about labor negotiations, performance evaluation, and we don't really have anything to report out of that at this time. Meeting protocol, the mayor shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and the council has a responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at council meetings. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and/or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. The town council will review the agenda at 10 o'clock tonight to ascertain which items will be heard this evening and which will be continued to another meeting. Any matter not started by 11:30 p.m. will be continued to an adjourned meeting or regular council meeting unless the council votes to suspend that rule. So please turn off all cellular phones or place them in silent mode, which I will do here too. First up on the agenda, we have an appointment of a candidate, Ray Bergerella, and is he here? Yes. Okay. Are you coming up to talk in his stead then? This is for an appointment to serve on the Open Space Committee for a full 4-year term. Yes, Mimi.
And Ray is on vacation this week, but he's come to our Open Space Committee meeting, and he's a very enthusiastic guy, so I'm standing in here for him to recommend him to you guys as a member of the Open Space Committee. He's recently retired. He's got a history of working in the food industry and sort of a world traveling businessman who's been a lifelong resident, or at least I think 20 or 30 years here in Fairfax, and wants to give back to the community now that he's not working anymore, and really enjoyed having his sort of a totally different flavor to our committee. It was really nice to have him, and I think he'd be a good good fit for us.
Well, I can say that I was also at the meeting where Ray showed up, and in fact, I realized that I'd met him a couple of years before in the neighborhoods. And I share Mimi's experience. Any other thoughts?
Usually we don't appoint people for the first time who are not here, but on your recommendation, I certainly would be happy to waive that general requirement and move his nomination forward.
So if
I
that's
second.
Okay, so we have a motion, Weinsoff, second Kohler. All those in favor? Ray?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. So, great, now I have a number of announcements. The Fairfax Food Pantry is every Saturday from 9 to 11 at the Fairfax Community Church, which is 2398 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. And as usual, there are volunteers needed. There is one vacancy on the Open Space Committee for a full year term. Isn't that what we just, is there another vacancy? Oh, there's another one, okay. So if you felt like you missed out, you didn't. If you go to an open space meeting and check them out, they are an interesting bunch of folks and they do some interesting things around Fairfax. There are 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission. One for an unexpired term, February 29th, 2016, and one for an unexpired term to the 31st of January in 2015. So if you would like to be on the Planning Commission, that's worth checking out. There is also an upcoming street festival called Streets for People on Bolinas Road, and that's not on the agenda here, but Renee has been pretty involved in planning it this year. I did a lot of it last year, and why don't you announce for the people?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know, and all of you listening at home, that the second annual Streets for People event will be on August 25th, and Bolinas Road will be closed between Broadway and Elsie Lane, similar to what we did last year, but this year from 11 to 4. The road will be closed from 9 to 5 in order to allow for setup and proper tear down of the day. And actually, it is different. I'd like to differentiate it from a street festival. This is really it's our own rendition of a movement called the Open Streets Movement. It's done all over the world. It's basically an opening of the public right-of-way for people. So what we're doing is encouraging all of our local merchants and retailers and food purveyors to come on outside, to bring their things out onto the street and to create a pedestrian celebratory atmosphere so that people get to know each other and really feel the genuine sort of the talents and the treasures of our community behind closed doors. So please come, youth music. We're going to open up the Bolinas Park this year for yoga and a sort of a healing arts kind of venue. The garage across the street across Sir Francis Drake is going to participate this year. We'll have music everywhere, and the free haircuts, and everything is coming back again. So please come and enjoy August 25th.
Yes, I think it was very successful last year. We had probably 1,000 people show up then, and I expect this year it will be even better. I mean, it sounds like it's really getting good. So hope to see you there. That's August 25th. It's a Sunday, just coming up the end of this month. If there are no other announcements that I didn't know about, right now is open time for public expression. Oh, wait, you're right. First, we have, number 2, a proclamation from the Town Council of the Town of Fairfax in honor of the late Jerry Garcia. And I guess the Town Council does proclamations from time to time, especially when there's a lot of support for it in the community. And the council member that brought this forward is Barbara Kohler, and perhaps you would like to read it?
Thank you. I also want to acknowledge Mimi Newton and Cecilia Benavides, who put a lot of work into this proclamation. So, proclamation in honor of the late Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead. whereas John Jerry Garcia was an American musician who was best known for his lyrical guitar work, soulful singing, and mythic songwriting, and as a founding member of the legendary band The Grateful Dead. And whereas Jerry Garcia was born in San Francisco, California on August 1st, 1942, and died in Forest Knolls, California on August 9th, 1995, and whereas Jerry Garcia's iconic fame and popularity have become an essential part of the American folklore and given way to new musical traditions, and because he is and was known as the heart and soul of a brotherhood of sound, the leader of a multicultural, multi-generational tribe known as Deadheads, and a musician so well steeped in a variety of American styles, both traditional and avant-garde, that the only way to classify his guitar and playing is to say it was and is Garcia's. And whereas Jerry Garcia was a longtime Marin resident with innumerable connections to our town, including his participation in a softball game between the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane that was played in our own central field, now known as Contrati Park, here in lovely Fairfax in the mid-1960s, and performed with the Jerry Garcia Band at a former Fairfax bar called River City on Bolinas Avenue on September 20th and 21st of 1970. And whereas Jerry Garcia has a special place in the hearts and minds of many Fairfaxians and will forever be a part of our town's culture and history, now therefore be it proclaimed by the mayor and the council of the town of Fairfax that the town celebrates the live music and ethos of Jerry Garcia, and be it further proclaimed that August 7, 2013 is Jerry Garcia Day in the town of Fairfax. Signed by John Reed, the mayor of Fairfax.
Can I ask a
Is it
question?
Cherry Garcia ice cream?
Who won the softball game?
Yeah, nobody remembered. They have to keep score. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, somebody better eat that ice cream before it melts. But we can't go back there, so why don't we open it up now for open time for public expression. There's a 3-minute time limit per person. If you wish to address the council, please approach the podium and state your name and address. Individuals have 3 minutes to speak, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. This is the time set aside for individuals wishing to address the council on matters that are not listed on the agenda. State law, Government Code Section 54954.2, provides that the council is not permitted to take action and strictly limits the right of the council to discuss any of the unagendized items unless it can be demonstrated to be of an emergency nature or the need to take immediate action arose after the posting of the agenda. So if you would have a public comment on something not on the agenda, please state your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Wasserman, and I live at One Meadow Way. I just was interested to find out if you have, I have something here called Fairfax. This is Wi-Fi that you have, I could have the code so I could get into it. Well, okay. Fairfax Access? Capital F, capital A. Okay, great, thanks.
Hello, John Fitzpatrick at 2096 at Francis Drake. I have a shop there. And I noticed the property for sale right next to the where the Good Earth used to be, where the garage is right now. And I think it would be a good idea if the town would consider buying that property and making another parking lot for the citizens. So it's a thought, and I don't know how to proceed with it or go any further, just that's an idea.
It's always a question of the private landowner, A, and B, funds. We have our budget here tonight. Every penny of this thing for years going out is carefully allocated toward just the bare bones of keeping our public safety and budget and things going forward.
I was thinking maybe put it to a vote and see if the people want to pay a certain amount, everybody. It'd be a good place to park, to take the bus. Well, you know, everybody knows what parking's about. But if it was on the ballot, if it could wait that long, if it was still for sale, I think it's a pretty good opportunity to get more parking in Fairfax. As always, if you come down here at night, it's a hard place to find a place to park. So it's just a thought.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm Jody Timms, 290 Cascade. I was appointed by you all in June to the Commission on Aging, and I just wanted to come back and report that I've attended 2 meetings, and I have someone that I also want to have introduce herself, because we are now collaborating on learning more about the seniors in Fairfax, and particularly we are going to be involved at Streets for People and try to find out more from our seniors who are there, what kinds of needs and interests they have for us to support.
And my name is Francie Bettinger, and I had applied for the open seat for District 2 and was just notified recently that I was appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So we're working together on this great commission of aging.
Me, it would be 415-987-4201. And we will have our emails and phone numbers available for folks at the Streets for People, because I would really like to encourage seniors to contact us and let us know what they would like to see us in particular support. One of the things we've been discussing a bit is actually how do politicians and people on commissions get to know what their constituents are interested in is that normally just through conversations? Is it through surveys? Is it through telephone contact? Is it through an email list? So we are going to do a little investigation and find out what kinds of things we can learn about the seniors in Fairfax from data that's been gathered by the town or by the county. So we can learn a little bit more, but we're eager to find out what folks would like us to do, as well as some ideas that we have on collaborating. So.
And I'd like to say that one of the main focuses that we both share is education, and to help let the seniors in our communities know what a wealth of resources are available to them, and help in particular in our town in Fairfax, especially at the event on the street, the Streets for People event, that we will have resources for them to take and just help them to navigate the system.
Yeah, I know. I was involved with a lot of public outreach with the volunteers and also with the GPAC to try to solicit different, thoughts from people. And really, you've got to go where they are and ask questions. And really, it depends on who your target audience is, what the best way is. And I would think person to person would help a lot. So, great. It's wonderful to hear that you're doing all this, and because that's a good way to do it. Are there more comments from the public on anything that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close the open time for public expression and move it over to council reports and comments. These are brief announcements and reports on council member assignments, committees, and activities, including reports from meetings attended at town expense. And you want to go first?
I always go first.
You always get to go first. You sure you don't want to go first?
Since we met on July 24th, just a few weeks ago, a few things. One, John, you and I attended that initial meeting on the mural, which is going on down the street, to see if that difficulty can be resolved. I also went to the annual Fairfax Historical Lunch, and I want to talk about that for a moment. The Fairfax Historical Society, as many of you know, is an organization that, to say that it plumbs the depths of Fairfax's history is an understatement. I think we're the only town in the world in which we have a historical society that knows exactly what happened on every day, but it's from about the late 1800s to the early 1900s. And Bill Sager and his son Brian and others work incredibly hard and put out brochures. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But they are, if they're watching, I'm sure they wouldn't mind my noting that they are getting on in years. And one of the things that was highlighted during the luncheon was the need to have new blood, young blood, to come in and begin to focus on that part of Fairfax which actually you're raising, which is the fact that the town went through many permutations, and from mountain biking to rock and roll and all of that. And that's not really attended to very much by the present Historical Society. And they're reaching out to the younger generation to see if they can foster an interest in joining the society and the important work that it does as the current group of folks head on into retirement and the society hopefully continues on. So I believe that there's a link to the society off of our town website, and anybody who's here or watching at home, I can't tell you how interesting and fascinating it is to know so much about the little town in which we live. And I would ask everybody to sort of take a look at that. And if it's an interest of yours from a historical perspective, dive right in. And then from a more humorous note, and maybe it's only Councilman Bragman who will appreciate this, lawyers are required to attend MCLE classes to meet a certain threshold. And one of the classes that I took for a mere 6 hours was on the Public Records Act and the Brown Act, because it applies so carefully to the work that we do here. I thought it was a selfless and a noble gesture on my part to sit through 6 hours of that. And with that, thank you.
I have nothing to report since the July 24th meeting. Thank you.
I attended a regular meeting, board meeting for the Community Media Center of Marin, which is actually the organization responsible for broadcasting the meeting that we're doing right now. So these cameras are actually being operated by someone from Community Media Center. They do a beautiful job of broadcasting our meetings, broadcasting Planning Commission meetings, training people in doing digital media production, and just doing a great job bringing Marin into the digital age. So the budget for Community Media Center is somewhat precarious right now, will be for the next maybe 2 or 3 years. So we may be bringing that back to the council to see if the town of Fairfax is willing to help the media center out to get through the next few years. And that's about it for me. Thanks.
Renee?
I think I'm going to too many meetings. But anyway, here's where I've been, and I just think it's important that the world out there knows sort of what we're tapped into and what we're learning about and what we bring back and what we represent of our town to the larger county. So I attended a Transportation Authority of Marin meeting where the Green Bay corridor improvement project is continuing to be debated, and plans are, flying back and forth and being looked at. Very interesting public meetings if you're interested in talking about that freeway interchange. We've had several zero waste meetings, a zero waste committee meeting where we talked about the ordinances which we will be talking about tonight, AB 341, which is the mandatory commercial recycling ordinance, and then our C&D, our construction and demolition ordinance, which is incredibly important if we're going to divert the masses and the tonnage from our landfill. It comes from, we know, food waste, but it also comes very much from construction and demolition. Met with Fairfax Focus, and talking about potential collaborations and how we fold the Youth Commission into some of the programs that we are, in the process actually of developing for primarily teenagers, and bringing in several new organizations in town who are working with youth ambassadors and talking about youth leadership opportunities. And so Focus and the council are going to start to collaborate and bring some of these together. The library is involved, so there's a lot of energy right now to create new programming. Met with our wonderful commissioners on the Commission on Aging. We're so lucky to have two local Fairfax people, one representing our town and one representing the our district at the county level, because we really have an opportunity to move this to a new level in terms of services that do exist that we, you know, a lot of people don't have access to or don't know exist. Last night was a school board meeting talking about the White Hill construction project and the bond measure. White Hill should be in the hands of the Ross Valley School District by October 22nd, meaning the new building, 7th and 8th grade wings, massive new construction. You should go up and look at it. It's fabulous. And the kids should be moving in by the start of the second term. And I wanted to recognize one more time Jody Timms, who's here. I attended the rally in Richmond this past weekend, standing in solidarity with the people of Richmond, who are demanding that Chevron acknowledge the damage, the harm, really the what they've done in the health crisis in Richmond. Jody Timms was there, is one of the main drivers of 350.org Marin, and there were also many other members of our community who participated in the rally. I think there were 3,000 people there, and I think the message was very clear and very strong, and I think the message was heard. So that's it.
Well, thank you. And in addition to the meeting that David talked about, I guess of note, I guess I met with Safe Routes to Schools. There's school pool and organizing different neighborhoods, those of you with kids, how to get to this White Hill School without sitting in traffic, walking and riding your bike, and riding the bus to White Hill, are all options that lower our carbon footprint, and basically there are some new tools coming from Safe Routes to School to enable people to network with their neighbors to have kids get to school safely. I also attended a heartwarming dinner volunteer board meeting where they said goodbye and thank you to one of their volunteer board people who's moving on, and it was just you know, the volunteers they do a lot of stuff that's fun, and up here with the council, the planning commission, whatever, you kind of deal with what comes up and you have to deal with, but it's kind of nice at the volunteer board, you deal with things that people like. Let me see, I also attended the Transportation Authority of Marin regular meeting, and I wish there was exciting stuff to report back from that, but it's, yeah, lots of fighting about lots of transportation money, so I'll leave it at that. So that would, sorry? Oh yes, the bike spine is another thing that I've met several times about. Thanks for the reminder. You may have noticed there's some new markings on the ground going on around a central corridor that goes through town, which is the start of the bike spine. And basically what this is a wayfinding for kids riding their bikes or walking to and from the schools. It's called the spine because it's kind of the backbone of the access route through town. It goes right in front of this building here and winds up towards White Hill, and it goes out as far as the Cascade Gates that way. It's going to have street markings, some of the green Sharrow markings that are you can see by the hub in San Anselmo. It's similar kind of color to that, and along with some street signs that says school bike route on it. And this is a new concept that is pioneered in Fairfax. A lot of other towns are asking us about it, and we say, well, we're just getting it out, and we'll tell you know, it'll doubtless have a couple of growing pains somewhere or other, and we're not sure exactly where yet, but hopefully it's going to raise awareness from motorists and also tell kids which way is the safe way to ride their bike to school, because we found over the years that parents and kids would reinvent the wheel in terms of finding the best route through town, and it's been figured out by countless parents. And why not pass that information along in an institutional way in the form of street markings. So we're excited about that project, and you should see it being completed within the next few weeks. And I guess that would conclude the report. So, town manager report? Do you have something?
Briefly, a report on the Good Earth. Good Earth recently reached out to the neighborhood and provided them their policies and protocol for their loading dock people in an effort to make sure truck deliveries are in compliance with the permit, as well as to help to try to reduce noise. With that being said, we also met separately with the Good Earth to go over what their policies were. We actually met separately with the neighborhood to hear what their concerns were. And both parties have agreed that they will meet again together in about 3 weeks or so, just to see how well the policies have been working and what issues may arise from that. And then ultimately report back to the Planning Commission in October, which is the end of the 6-month period. Other than that, I think on the dais, there are some supplemental staff reports, so we just wanted to make sure the council members got the supplemental reports for the other items. But other than that, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So next up on the agenda is the consent calendar, with the exception of number 4, which is the budget, number 3 through 8. Does anybody have any comment on the consent calendar? Any public comment on anything on the consent calendar?
Then I will move the consent calendar absent number 4.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so motion once off, second Goddard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. And so next up, we should hear adoption of resolution number 13-42, adopting the 2013-2014 budget.
Since I pulled it off, the reason I pulled it off is because as our most important document, our most a critical responsibility of our work here on the council, I felt that it was important that we adopt it as a part of the regular agenda rather than consent. It also gives an opportunity for the council once again to thank all of the staff for their input in preparing the budget, not least of which, of course, our manager and Mike Vivret, who labored to make this a readable document and that respectful of the community, so that they can understand exactly where their generous tax dollars are going. And the council can't thank you enough for the labor that you put into this.
Yeah, indeed. It's the budget has always seemed to me in years past a mysterious document, and it is a lot more readable now, and it's got a lot of broken out ways to look at it. So it's very useful, and it's not only a lot of work, but it's now more evident what it's about, and so I thank you very much for that, both making it more legible and bringing it to us here. Is there any public comment on the budget?
Well, 3 public hearings, not 1 public comment on the budget. I think it's testament in full of the quality of the work that you've produced. And with that, I would move approval of resolution 13-42, adopting the 13-14 budget.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion Weinsoff, second Kohler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That is also unanimous, so thank you very much for that. And now moving on to the regular agenda, we have an award of the Pastory Storm Drain Outfall Project bid. And the staff report coming to us from Garrett, Town Manager.
Great. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the recommendation actually has 4 parts to it. One is we're asking to authorize the town manager to award the contract for Pastory Outfall Pipe and Bank Stabilization Project to Gelati Construction for $171,000. We are also asking you to authorize the town manager to then remove the storm drain work, which is the bid alternate, from the contract in the amount of $20,000. That would bring the project cost to $151,000 for the bank stabilization work only. We're asking you to also authorize a contingency reserve of 10%, or about $15,000, and that's 10% of the hard costs, just for unforeseen project costs that may occur during the course of the work, and that would be used by the town manager in those situations, and to appropriate $61,400 from the dry period fund for the project. We've currently have budgeted $200,000 for the project. Ultimately, the project we think could cost as much as $261,000, but that includes $35,000 of contingency funds. If we do not use that, we'll just return that to the fund. So potentially the project would cost around $226,000. As a little background for people not familiar with the project, town actually has been working on this for several years. It concerns the stabilization of a creek bank in the San Anselmo Creek near the Pastore Bridge, as well as the replacement of a 24-inch storm pipe with a 48-inch pipe. What we're proposing tonight is that we not award the bid alternate, which is the pipe enlargement, and then we just award the bank stabilization. The bids were actually opened on August 2nd. We got 5 bids. Lowest responsible bidder is Gelati Construction at $171,000. Their bid alternate was $20,000. So ultimately, prior to the award of the contract by staff, we will inform the contractor. We'll remove that from the bid, that scope of work. You must award the contract actually based on the total base. So that's why you're awarding it at 171. That's your lowest responsible bidder. Other than that, in terms of the costs, actually the engineer's estimate for the total work was $180,000, so the bid actually was under that. Base stabilization portion is probably higher than we thought it would be, so ultimately we work out, and what's attached to the budget is we thought we budgeted $200,000. Looks like it could again be $261,000. That's why we're appropriating the additional funds. Hopefully we don't need the contingency reserves, but we'll obviously find out as we move through the process. So with that, that concludes the staff report. Any questions?
Larry?
I guess where we're at, this has been a long story, a long time coming for members of the public. Actually more than several years, probably more like 7 or 8 years, to get this project to partial completion. And I've got a couple questions about that partial completion issue, which is where we bifurcate the bid. So what you're recommending is that we give you authority to split the bid and take out the section of completion of the storm drain, enlargement of the storm drain, correct?
That's correct.
And so that removes $20,000 from the lowest responsible bid, correct?
That's correct.
Do we know what it's going to cost the town to remobilize to finish that pipe?
At this point, we don't know, but you would have to believe that a lot of the costs you're incurring right now, especially the biological and water quality, you would have to do that again. Water diversion pipe, you would have to do that again. You'd have to get your permits again. That's an added cost, actually not in here. My guess is you would still be looking at least $100,000 just for that work, if not more. It's really difficult to tell. We were surprised the bid alternate portion was so low, but it's because they have to do all that mobilization and all their equipment and get out there. So, you know, that's the same no matter what you do.
And the reason we're contemplating splitting the bid is because of the issue with the owner of the bridge, who has so far obstructed the town's request to complete the storm drain through the bridge, correct?
That'd be correct. We were having difficulty gaining access that we need to complete the project.
Okay. I just think it's such a shame for the town to have to incur these unnecessary duplicative costs in the future. The reason this project is needed is to relieve flooding in the Kent, Bell, and Coolidge neighborhoods. And we've been stymied in completing the project. And we are, the next item is going to be considering splitting the bid. But I just want to make a comment in the public record that it really is a shame that the town is going to have to incur really what are duplicative costs if it's ever to complete the project and provide a little more relief to these neighborhoods that do have periodic flooding. So just wanted to get that dialogue out on the record. Thanks.
Any comments from other council members? No? Well, I must say that I agree. I think it's unfortunate that we're having to spend money that down the road that could be better lumped all together at the same time. I understand that there's concerns, especially by the property owner, that the bridge not be compromised. And I can understand his fears because that bridge means a lot to that access to that particular property. At the same time, I think that a lot of it is fear-based in that what might happen and not trusting that, you know, engineers can solve the problem. It's not that unusual to put a drainage pipe through the side of an old bridge that you don't have the plans for anymore, so you don't know what's inside of it. You know, that project actually, I think, began in 2003, is that correct? Yeah, a long time ago. And so it's unfortunate that we've gone down this road in the past, and so at this point, it seems like the best way forward to both protect, you know, some ongoing damage that is happening there adjacent to the pipe is to truncate this, you know, bid alternate, and we kind of find ourselves having to do that at this point. So I guess for the public's benefit, that's a little piece of it. There's a lot to talk about. There's some of it has been in the newspaper, certainly not all of it. So there we go. Is there? I would like to open up to public comment on this. You press the button right there.
Sorry. My name is Kathleen McCann, and I live at 46 Wood Lane. Excuse me. And I apologize because I feel like there's probably some things that you've had to rehash. And so if I'm taking up more time, the thing that confuses me a bit is that several years ago, there was an issue. There were some trees in front of my house that were planted long before the property was ever in my hands. And the roots they lifted the sidewalk, started to lift the water meter, and started to buckle the street. So even though I didn't plant them, the town told me I was responsible for taking the trees out, and that if I didn't and it created damage to the street, that I could be held responsible to have that repaired. So I guess the thing that I'm asking is the property owner of the Marin Town and Country now seems to be able to orchestrate things in a way that he's not responsible for something that, if it's not addressed, could be a public safety issue and cost other people money and the town money. So I'm wondering, maybe things have changed since the situation was, since I was in that situation, but I don't know. I'm finding it confusing that someone can have that much power to prevent the town from doing work that is necessary. And as someone who has sustained flood damage, I mean, and any one of us, we know the impact of that. So I just wanted to say that, I just find it perplexing that some people have more, seemingly more control over what they are responsible for and not responsible for than other people do. So I thank you for your time.
Hi, Wendy O'Rear, 45 Pastori Avenue. Just a couple of things just for the public's benefit. People might not be aware. The pipe did break in the flood of 05 and 06. And for the past 7 years, it's been eroding the creek bank, which is adjacent to my home. And at this point, the bank's very unstable, and it may collapse and put my home at risk. The other thing I wanted to mention is we keep talking about stabilization, but it's more than that. It's an energy dissipation channel. It's basically setting up the creek bed for the influx of water that's coming from the pipe. So, I mean, I understand kind of both sides of this, and certainly understand that the town is not able to do the whole project, and I am sorry for that. But I just did want to make the point that it's more than a stabilization that's being accomplished here. And I'm also still kind of curious that the creek has to be dewatered if the pipe were ever to be able to be enlarged through the bridge. I just still want to bring that up as something. I know the work they're doing on the shopping center, I don't think they're dewatering. Don't think so.
Are you speaking of the behind where the cleaners is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on the planning commission. Yes, there is dewatering, and they're removing fish and moving birds' nests. So it's really necessary when you do construction to dewater.
Okay, yeah, I guess just because the pipe is up out of the creek, you know, it's somewhat higher, but I am not here to debate it. I'm looking for ways to help, basically.
Thank you.
So I hope that you will make this decision to stabilize the creek bank and also to limit the town's risk of inverse condemnation liability. Thank you.
Some more public comment, yes. We're in the public comment period for item 9.
Okay, I apologize about being late. There's a meeting out in San Geronimo Valley for the county that I said I'd participate in. Since I was late, if there's any questions that you have or comments, I'd be pleased to address them. Good enough, thank you.
Mayor.
Yes.
So, just a question for our town attorney. If we go the route that's been recommended and that we've discussed numerous times of splitting the project, where are we? Do we have a right of entry?
Okay, thank you. I believe, I am told that we do have agreement on a right of entry. Mr. McIntosh just indicated that he did. Earlier today, in his attorney's office, we were on a call, and he said that our latest version or draft of this right of entry is fine, and he signed it in front of his attorney, who is not and will not be able to be with us tonight. He also indicated, though, that he will give it to me after this item is over.
And so that you've had that discussion with Mr. McIntosh and his attorney, and you've been given assurances to that effect, correct?
That's correct. Mr. McIntosh just indicated, and he said, in fact, yes, we have agreement.
Good.
So I have not seen the document with his signature on it.
Have there been any changes or?
There have been numerous changes.
Okay. Have there been any changes since you last saw the document?
Not that we've agreed to, no.
Okay.
Okay, we made changes today, and I made them. I have the document. I have control of the document, so I made changes to the document, and then PDF'd it, sent it over to his attorney's office. We had a phone conversation, and they agreed that everything was fine, and that Mr. McIntosh was going to execute the right of entry agreement.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I understand that that is basically contingent on this split that we're talking about.
That is my understanding from Mr. McIntosh.
Are there other comments from up here? Questions?
I'll make the motion unless you want to, Larry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I'm assuming this is all going to come to fruition momentarily, but, you know, if something is not as it appears, as we think it is, I think then we would have grounds for reconsideration of the vote. So
I believe that it's understood, Garrett, that if we do not get the right of entry agreement, then this would become null and void.
The language of the bid document.
Oh, yeah, the problem is if without the access, then you can award a bid, but the contractor can't start any work until he has access. And we have provisions, we could pull back the bid, cancel the bid without access, cancel the award without access.
In the bid document.
It's in the bid docs, so we have that wording in there.
Okay.
With that, with palpable annoyance, both on behalf of myself, and if I could speak for prior council members who had to suffer through endless hours of conversation on the absolute nonsense of this entire process, and with Ms. McCann's quite apt observation, I would, with phenomenal regret and anger, move that we award the bid for the Pastore Storm Drain Outfall Project to Gelati Construction in the amount of $171,000.
and with the friendly amendment that we give the manager the authority to bifurcate the bridge and withdraw the completion of the storm drain through the bridge wing wall.
Right, and
Absolutely.
if you could adopt the four recommended items, that would be preferred.
With the 4 recommended items identified in Agenda Item 9, the addendum that we received. Do you want them read out? Fine. Number 1, authorizing the town manager to award the contract for the Pastore Outfall Pipe and Bank Stabilization Project to Gelati for $171K. Authorizing the town manager to remove the storm drain work, the bid alternate, from the contract in the amount of $20K. Authorizing a contingency reserve of $15K, 10% for the project to be used for unforeseen project costs by the town manager. And number 4, appropriating $61,400 from our dry period fund, Fund 2, for this project.
Okay, well, we have a motion. Weinsoff, no further adjectives. Second, Bragman, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously at this time. So, and hopefully this is what you expect to see.
It's going to take her a little bit.
So,
just to
yeah,
review.
it'll take a little while to look at a 4-page document, but, okay. So far, so good. Number 10, approval of contract with CSW Stuber-Stroh for construction administration services for the Pastore Storm Drain Outfall Project in an amount not to exceed $37,400. So,
This item actually is directly related to the item you just approved. It's the construction management services required for the project. Not only does it include construction management, it includes all the record keeping, interaction with the biological and wildlife consultants, environmental permitting, FEMA. We have FEMA money, FEMA rep keeping. So this is what we need, these services for the project. CSW actually has been the project engineer on this project for the last several years, very familiar with the project. They actually obtained all the permitting for the regulatory agencies. They're actually the best suited to perform this work, and so we're recommending approval of the contract. And with your last action, there's actually money in the budget to pay for this expense.
so I am to understand you that this $37,000 is included in the previous amount?
Well, actually, I should rephrase that. The $37,400 was contained in the $200,000 budget
That you talked about
that we
verbally.
originally planned,
Yes.
because we had contingency money in there. But now with the additional amount of contingency money that you've allocated to the project overall, there's enough money to handle all possible contingencies for the project. But this action itself, there actually is enough of money to cover this service within the budget for the project as it stands.
Okay, so are there questions from council on this item? Are there comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, I would close the public comment section.
I'll make a motion to approve the CSW Superstro Engineering Group contract.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion Wensoff, second Goddard. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so that is the outfall pipe. Next up, we have a status of a cleanup at 19 Manor Road in Fairfax. And I guess we heard a lot about this last time around. Do you have a report for us, Mark?
Not much more of a report. As you're aware, the property was in pretty bad shape at the last meeting, and you directed us to reach out to the owner and see if it could get cleaned up before this meeting. And I went by there today, and it actually has been cleaned up quite a bit. It looks pretty good. So I would answer any other questions you have about it.
Mayor, could I ask staff a question?
Certainly.
I went out there and I thought it looked much better, so I'm really glad you got through to them. I guess my question is, now that it's improved and it's cleaned up, how do we manage it? How do we make sure that it stays that way? Can that be a condition of any permitting that he's applying for? I just hate to see us go through this over and over again.
At this point, the job is stopped. So they're basically, if you feel that it looks good the way it is, they would pretty much not be allowed to go there unless there's a few things they could do there. They could build the fence on, the fences on the side of the property. That would be something that we would allow them to do if they wanted to do that. But otherwise, they wouldn't be able to go to the property and use it for staging other jobs and dumping stuff there. They would have to stay away. I can monitor it. I can go by there once a week, and I'm sure that the neighbors would be willing to call if they see the contractor there.
Do we have any of the neighbors here?
I believe there are some of the neighbors here, and I believe the contractor has a representative here also.
Okay, because I'd really like to hear from the neighbors.
I have a couple of questions. So I went by there Sunday, and the tractor was there, which was subsequent to the 8/1 inspection. I went by there this morning, and it was not there. What I saw was about 15 or so pallets stacked. In my mind, there's no reason for pallets to be, and they were there Sunday and this morning. There's also the pile of bricks, which I see as something we're saying is okay to leave there. I'm concerned about the stockpile of soil that's probably about maybe 8 to 10 feet tall, that if it's a windy day, that's going to be blowing soil on the neighbors. So I'm not sure why the pallets weren't on the list. Maybe they were considered under some miscellaneous. I don't see any reason for those to be there. I'm concerned about the soil that is uncovered. And I have a lot of concern that I was there Sunday, the tractor was there. I feel very strongly that this condition really does need to be monitored on a weekly basis. And if there is more material brought to the site, that rather than bringing it back to the council, you need to issue a citation. I think we don't need the neighbors to have to come in here and complain very validly. So I'm just wondering about the pallets and the pile of soil.
The soil is something that they probably will end up using during the construction process. During the wintertime, they need to cover it. We could have them cover it with a brown tarp, something that doesn't stand out so much. I'm sure that they would be willing to do that. The pallets, I think, are actually shoring blocking that they have.
They're just stacked. They're not shoring anything up.
Right, but I believe that they're shoring blocks, and they have quite a bit of it there. I don't really feel that they need to have it there. They are stating that they're going to use it in the construction process.
Well,
I would let them explain why they need to have that lumber there.
Okay, well, it's not lumber, it's pallets, but, okay, so that was concerning also the blue tarps on the side of the house that I'm guessing they're there because there probably are no walls, but they look pretty shabby in my mind. So I'm happy to ask those questions, but I don't think as far as the pile of soil necessarily it's just a winter issue. It potentially could be, it's been pretty windy. So I'd be happy to ask those questions of the owner.
Yeah. I also went by there yesterday, and it's greatly improved from what it was before, and it doesn't look too bad if you remember what it looked like before. I mean, I agree with Barbara that it, you know, especially the house with the tarps wrapped around it, it looks pretty bad. You know, I was also concerned that there seems to be some broken slabs of concrete that are mixed in with the soil, kind of leaned up against that pile. You know, it may be that those are going to be used for something in particular. I don't know. I guess the reassurance that there could be citations and that the builder knows that there could be citations for using this once again as a staging area. I mean, my impression from hearing from the neighbors was that this could change hourly. You know, people dropping things off in the morning and then picking them up in the afternoon, and you know, that's a lot of activity. So unfortunately, I think it is going to rely on neighbors being the eyes and the ears of the building official, you know, because you can't be camped out there all the time. You know, I don't want the neighbors to have to be policing it the whole time either, but they're there already, so, and they stand the most to benefit from it being reported. So I think that it would be useful to have you have the authority to give citations further.
Yes, I can write citations.
Yes. Okay. And that we know that this is, you know, getting the attention it needs. I mean, hopefully we're on the right track here and we can get to the right resolution down the road. So.
Quick question. Mark, when we first visited this issue, we began the conversation with the manager about the fact that folks could get a building permit and then twist a screw and come back 6 months later and twist it, and this can go on forever. Have you given some further thought, or the manager given some further thought on this idea of you get a permit and you build it within X, or you don't get to just drag it out over time?
We are planning to have some discussions with the town attorney about that in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a little off the subject there, but my concern there is that's great if it's geared towards somebody with, you know, the money to hire a contractor and a bunch of people, but we also have a lot of people who are closer to the poverty line in Fairfax. And sometimes it is a homegrown project as long as it is moving diligently and the neighbors are being kept happy, most importantly. You know, I think we need to be an understanding town of different people's economic conditions. I think this whole discussion is better for when we're talking about that particular issue, but that's just my thought right now. So, did I open this up to the public already? Okay, well, if there's anybody from the public who would like to speak to this issue, please come forward.
My name is Robert Bifus. I own 17 Manor. And yes, the cleanup that I saw in the front, I agree, is in the front lot is much nicer. But as far as the yard goes, I'd give it about a 4 on a scale of 10. I mean, it's literally probably no more than half cleaned up. I really appreciate what you said. Don't mean to point. I put my glasses on. Barbara, thank you for being astute and noticing the tarp, which and the pallets and the bricks. And if you walked in the back towards the house, on my property towards the back, you would see a far greater mess, many more things that don't need to be there. I mean, it's pretty bad, and it does look better when you look over the fence, especially on the left side, on the right side, which Mark sent me a picture just of that side, not the whole lot. So, you know, when I saw it, I went, okay, that's good. And then I went there and looked at it, and I realized it was only really half done. But the front area is much improved. Now, as far as throwing over a tarp, well, the tarp is an eyesore, and it rattles in the wind, which, as you mentioned, it gets quite windy. As far as Mark's idea of throwing a tarp over the dirt pile, that's just going to be more noise on the wind. And when it rains, the dirt has been pulled away from the fence about 18 inches. And the damage is still there to the fence, but at least now some repair work can be done. But when it rains, that dirt's just going to fall right back down. A couple of good rains, it's just going to end up right back where it is. So to build a fence there right now without moving the dirt pile would be useless. You know, I have two problems I have, big problems, really big, and that would be the house is too close to my property line. And I know that, I guess it's allowed to be 6 feet away. It's a disaster being that close to my house. And I did show some pictures last week, or 2 weeks ago, and it shows it looming. It takes away, it's right in front of one of my picture windows, which that's all you see now, is when you look out, you see a big house above and with a tarp around it. And it also, it is too high. It's higher than the plans called for, which somebody brought up last week, 2 weeks ago. I don't know what can be done about that, but that was a pretty arrogant thing to do, I think, to just build it higher. And the other thing is, I think the building is condemnable as is, and always was. And I think the fact that it should have another third party look at that. And I would be willing to pitch in or even pay for it if it wasn't exorbitantly high, just to get another opinion. I think the idea that it was 50% salvageable was based on Mr. Ludke's report himself. He did have a termite report that was never established to be 50% salvageable material, where he did say it was salvageable was when he performed his own report on that property with sort of a Home Depot homeowner's kind of camera that the termite people don't even use. It's not even used in the industry because they like to feel and touch and hammer and really see where the rot and the termites are. You can't really see that with a camera, and that's why they don't rely on those cameras. That's what he relied on, Mr. Ludke. And then he presented his report and said, it looks good, and the town bought into it. And so I think that deserves another look. And so anyway, I'm glad to see some progress. I don't know where we're going to go from here. I'm glad to hear some of your ideas of citations. I think that's great. So I'm happy to see the progress, but I have a feeling that this thing is going to drag on. And I sure would like to get the two things addressed, the height and the closeness. And I know those are going to be tough to address, but I think they deserve a serious look. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public want to speak to this? Seeing none, yes, Barbara?
I have just one more question of Mark, and forgive me for not recalling this. Does the owner have building permits at this time? Or does he have old building permits? Is that this?
He had building permits. He does have a building permit, but it is suspended at this time because the work went beyond what was permitted.
So my question is, some of what we're saying are things such as the bricks would be used for a patio during construction, or the soil would be used during construction. That presupposes that he will gain the entitlements to do the construction. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So just to check on precedent, is this kind of the usual situation where somebody would have this kind of material kind of planning on doing construction? I mean, I'm kind of getting at the point is it worthwhile, particularly the soil pile, to remove it so that we don't have a bunch of mud going all over the site in a rainy season should he not be able to move forward? Just wondering about that.
I think the soil can be protected. We have methods that we, actual handouts that we hand out to contractors on how to cover the soil and to protect it during the winter. So I don't think that's a problem, but it's up to you really is whether or not you want that to remain or not.
Okay.
Can I raise a question? And I don't want to put you on the spot, so maybe we have this conversation at a later time. But from what you just said, he doesn't have an active building permit. The gentleman at 17 Manor says that the house is looming over his house, is tarped, is perhaps failing in some way in its stability, whatever the technicalities of this are. You want to take a gander at this, or is there a more proper time to bring this back for conversation?
Well, that's one of the reasons why the job is stopped, is because basically they were just going to move this old cabin out and lift it up and put it on a new foundation, but it basically is a new house now. It's completely reframed. There's all new lumber inside. It's all seismically correct. That's why it's been stopped, because they didn't just move it out and lift it up. They basically built a new house. So,
and why is it 6 feet from his picture window?
Because when they moved it, it was on somebody else's property, and it was also in the creek. And so we had them meet the required setbacks, and that's the setback on the side is 6 feet, and the setback from the creek is 20 feet, and that's where they moved it.
And is there any way to revisit that decision?
It will be very difficult because it has a brand new foundation that was very expensive for them to put in.
Are you sure that we went through all of the processes and procedures, planning commission, whatever was involved? Because what I see here is the fact that we've accommodated 17 while harming, or 19 while harming 17.
I believe that we did follow all of the guidelines that were required.
Is there any way we can revisit this for the equities of it?
Well, the Planning Commission is going to revisit it because they didn't do what they said they were going to do and what was approved. So the Planning Commission could say you have to move it somewhere else. But
so the concerns raised by number 17 might be addressed by the Planning Commission down the road?
Yes.
Can I just ask, in your experience, what is the recourse when someone builds higher than is permitted to build? I mean, what can you do?
Well,
just physically.
They raised it up, but they stayed within the limit. So they did not go over what is allowed by the code. They just didn't follow what was on the plans. So the house could probably be shortened. It would be inexpensive to do that, but they probably could cut it down.
And so that whole process or that whole deliberation is going to go to the Planning Commission, correct?
That's correct.
So just to go back to the matter at hand, I didn't really get a look at the back of the project. I pretty much just looked over the fence. It sounds like at a minimum that pile needs to be tarped and covered. Is there anything else in the back that I didn't look at that you're aware of, or that we should add to our punch list of things that need to get done?
I didn't go around behind the property. Linda and another inspector that took my place last week went out and inspected around the house. And, so I haven't been behind the house. I've just looked over the fence as well.
Okay. Could I ask the owner of 17 if he could just come forward again and just let us know what you're talking about so that we could follow up on that? So you understand that the height and setback issues are really not before the town council right now. So what we're talking about is just sort of getting the situation under control.
Yes. But when, I mean, when will it be presented to the town council? Are we talking another
It's
6?
going to have to go through the planning commission, so you're going to need to be bird dogging this project as it goes through the planning commission, which is a separate body
Okay.
that meets regularly.
Okay, and in regard to it being reframed and inside, that was another transgression on the owner's part. He did build it higher than the plans, and he was not supposed to do any of that. Just to give you an idea of the mindset of this particular
And
individual.
that will also be in front of the planning
Yeah.
commission, but right now we're dealing with the debris
Yes,
around.
I understand. Okay, let me address that. So if any of you, or Mark, if you want to meet me back there, I mean, we can walk back there. I don't want to walk on his property without permission, but you can actually see it from my property. And I'd be glad to point it out. There's just tons of stuff back there. I mean, I do see some, I think I saw paint cans, but it's just a mess. I mean, you don't see it unless you go on my property or on Shirley's property around the other side. And I didn't really, I mean, I did have pictures 2 weeks ago that showed that area. I don't have them now. I left them with you guys, but
Yeah, we saw them.
I would think that maybe Mark and I and maybe even the contractor could go back there and discuss the whole situation and figure out what needs to be there and what doesn't need there. You'd be surprised how messy that is, and I'm surprised.
So could I ask a question of Garrett? Would it be appropriate for us to direct Mark to meet up with this gentleman and inventory what's going on at that property and report back to us?
I think that's appropriate. We can do that.
And a lot of that stuff is right on the creek edge, so when it does rain, it could end up in the water. I mean, so that's another thing. So that would be important to address that.
So my request would be to direct staff to meet with this gentleman and inventory what's going on behind the house, make recommendations or orders to the owner, report back to us, see if we can improve that side of the lot.
Okay, that sounds. I don't think the tarp, I just want to add, I don't think the tarp over the dirt is going to do much. I think it should be, like I said, it's just going to collapse again it's only this far away from the fence. It's just going to collapse again right where it was when it gets wet. And tarps unless you really pin them down, they're going to rattle in the stormy nights and the wind. And it's bad enough there's one on the house. I don't even know why it's on the house. It's not covering the roof. It's just on the siding, and it's loose, and it doesn't even need to be there. I think your observation about it, why is it there? I don't know.
One thing I will say is I want to maybe further clarify what Councilmember Bragman is asking, but a tarp over a pile of soil is not going to make the noise that you're hearing what's going through the house. I mean, I've done a lot of construction myself, so there shouldn't be a ballooning and the flapping. It should be held down with bricks or something. So I don't think that will be a noise issue, but one thing I want to maybe clarify is that after the survey of the backyard through, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Yeah, Robert Bifus.
Mr. Bifus, looking through his yard, I would like to see, Garrett, if we can direct staff to use his judgment to order the owner to remove those things and then report back that they were removed.
Right.
I don't think okay, I just wanted to clarify that so that we can get this done expeditiously and then keep on top of monitoring as well as requesting that the neighbors let Mark know if more stuff shows up so we can keep on top of it.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So the idea would be for him to inspect, issue some whatever corrections are needed in his opinion as the building official, and follow up and make sure it gets done.
Okay.
And report back to us at our next meeting.
Sounds good. And
Does that
will I be able to?
Does that work for staff?
Yeah, report back, so place it on the agenda, just similar to this, to report back.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I just wondered if the contractor's rep wanted to say anything.
work for Mr. Lutke. I'm representing, we did the house moving, all that good stuff.
Could you state your name?
Mark Robert Benda. I've got the list of the correction notice that we did from Linda and Mark, and that we complied with all of that. The bulldozer was removed on Monday morning. The pallets were removed yesterday, so that's done. All the blue.
I was there this morning, and the pallets were there.
Did you see cribs? Did you see short or pallets?
I saw pallets. I saw about 15 pallets.
Not this morning, you didn't.
I was there about 11 o'clock.
We can go out there right now. I swear to God, with my hand on the Bible, there's no pallets at that site. Not one.
I think we can let Mark look
Okay,
at that.
that's
Thank you.
cool. The blue tarps that were nailed to the house, because we framed it, we did framing, and we put plywood to protect it in the winter, and then we put the blue tarps over that, so that's what they were there for. And as far as 17 Banner, I talked to him about 6 months ago. We were gonna go in halves on a fence. My boss was gonna pay for all the labor. He was gonna pay for half of the materials. When it came time, we had all the lumber, everything delivered to build a 110-foot, 6-foot fence from the back of the creek all the way to the street. It came time for him to pay for half of the fence materials, just the materials. We were doing all the work, all the labor. He wouldn't pay. So there could have been a 10-foot or 110-foot fence, 6 foot high, that whole length, 6 months ago, but he would not pay. So that's when he's complaining, when it came time to get his checkbook out and actually pay for the material, just material, he wouldn't do it. So that's not true.
Can I ask a question? So typically when you're doing a house, you use Tyvek rather than tarps. Is there any thought to switching from the tarps, which they look pretty shabby, they're kind of ballooning out. Is there a way of switching to Tyvek, which would be, I think, better for the house itself?
We could do that. And another thing, we have with Mr. Lutke hired Zion Engineering he's going to be doing the planning, the new design, and phase 2 of this is coming. It's just a matter of getting it through the planning commission, doing all the proper channels, and we've got a bank loan ready to go. This thing is ready to go as soon as we get it through the planning commission. We're ready. And what happened was he went in with his partner. My boss was going to move the house. I moved the house 28 feet from the creek, 9 feet from Mr. 17 Manor's property. It's 9 feet over from the setback, so we're clear on that one. And then the person that was going to take the second phase of this over went to the doctor, had pancreatic cancer, and is dead. That's Larry Ofiaro. So my boss now has to come up somehow with the money for phase 2, which he never intended to have to do. So that's why there's kind of been a delay. But as far as a fence, I can work with that. But we made it a conscious effort. We were going to build that fence. So I'm kind of not real happy with what he said, that, oh, well, blah, blah, because he knew all about building a fence and going in halves on that. And the height's exactly where it was when we started. It just looks a little bit taller because perception, when you moved it forward, it looked a little bit bigger. It's framed, it's structurally sound, and it's perfect. And the representative for phase 2 is in the back here, and if you want to have any questions for him, he's going to be doing the design. He's got a designer, he's got a person that used to be on the planning commission in Fairfax that's going to help guide him through it, and he'll be glad to talk to you also.
Thank you.
And anybody can come out. My phone number is on the front gate, and anytime anybody wants to meet me out there, I have a key to the gate, the house, anything, to take a walk through, I'm happy to do it. Okay.
We've got your agreement that you'll work with Mark and the neighbor to get the property in the back, clean it up according to Mark's specifications.
I'll do anything Mark says, no problem.
Okay.
And as far as the fence, I'll build that fence in 3 days. Give me 3 days to build that whole fence. I'll build him a 110-foot long fence, 6 foot high, in 3 days, if he can agree to it.
Okay.
I'll do it. I got a machine that'll drill the posts, set them. I'll have my 10-man crew out there. We will get that thing done 3 days,
Okay,
promise.
we're going to hear back next meeting.
Okay,
See
perfect.
how it goes.
You want us to talk to the
Thank you.
phase 2 designer? Possibly what his plan is to expedite this thing? He's showed up.
That would be.
Sure.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Benjamin Conham with Zion Engineering, a project management company. We've been engaged by Mr. Lutke to project manage the completion of the development of the single-family house. And his vision is a quality 1,900 square foot home that utilizes the existing structures there and then adds a little bit onto the east side of it. those drawings and design review packages coming in the next month or two. So some of the vision there is to retain the large lot that it has and an open organic garden area, a bioscreen on the north side between the house and the creek, and Sir Francis Drake, a detached one-car garage at the front end of the property. And I think it'll be a quality project when it's done.
A quick question, and as you can imagine, the council likes nothing more than a good Hatfield and McCoy dispute. I'm wondering if the concept of moving the house so that it doesn't loom into number 17's view shed is in the works and the thinking.
Well, I think from an engineering point of view, it's a challenge. The foundation is not only existent, but it's got a deep 6-foot plus crawl space, so the walls go deep into the ground. So it's, I mean, obviously anything can be done, but that would be a costly change for him.
The foundation has already been set.
Correct. Any questions? Thanks.
Okay, so have we heard enough about this? Okay. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to hearing more about it next month. So number 12 is approval of agreement with California Infrastructure Consultancy for preliminary engineering, environmental, and design services for bridges around town. I guess there's 5 of them. Garrett, do you want to give us a report on this?
Sure. Maybe as a little background, back in March of this year, Council directed staff to issue a request for proposals for a firm to do the engineering, preliminary engineering, environmental, and design work for the 5 bridges. We issued RFP. We received 5 responses. We're looking for one firm really to do all the turnkey work. We believe that the firm, the California Infrastructure Consultancy, CIC, is the most qualified. They've also helped us on the bridges in terms of securing the funding in the past. And the funding is coming from the federal government. 3 of the bridges are Canyon, Marin, and Spruce, and those fall under the Bridge Preventive Maintenance Program. That's what I refer to as more repair of kind of maintenance deficiencies. And then we have the Highway Bridge Program, and that involves Creek and Meadow Way. Creek is a seismic retrofit, and Meadow Way, I think that's a lot of concern expressed by the neighborhood, and I'd like to spend a little time talking about the scope of work and what that actually means for Meadow Way. So it is correct that when we issued RFP, we issued it under the guise of replacement of Meadow Way, because right now the National Bridge Inventory and the state assessment, based on the functional obsolescence and structural deficiency, the bridge does qualify as a replacement. So we had a little catch-22 here in the sense that we realized the Meadow Way neighborhood's very concerned about their bridge in terms of replacement, what it will look like in the future. And so the problem was we need money in order to do the preliminary engineering to confirm the assessment. Get out there, look at the structural deficiencies, and see if the information the state was relying on is true, for one thing. The other thing is we would like to have a very extensive public outreach process for all the bridges, especially for Meadow Way, for the neighborhood. And we need to have money to also do that in environmental. So the problem is, in order to get the money from the state, which is actually managing it on behalf of the federal government, we had to apply for replacement money because that's what Caltrans requires to get money. And so what we've done is we've applied for that funding, and we now have a commitment for Phase 1 funding. Phase 1 for Meadow Way specifically is just environmental, well, it's environmental work, but really structural assessments to really give us the information we need to have a discussion with the neighborhood. So very important, in order to have a really informed discussion for the council and the neighborhood and staff, we want to have all that base information so we're all talking about the same thing on the same page. It doesn't mean we'll all agree, but at least we can have that information. So Phase 1 is just that, public outreach, initial assessment. Phase 2 will require council approval as well as Caltrans approval to commit the additional funding. So you're only approving Phase 1. This allows us to get started, take a look. It will explore replacement. It will explore no replacement, just what that means, as well as life cycle, so you can understand how long that bridge will last if you just left it as is. And then we can have a discussion. There'll be some exploring of preliminary design of maybe a 1-lane bridge, how it could look to reflect the character of the community. But really the goal is to provide enough information to make a decision how to proceed, and that'd be Phase 2. So phase one for Meadowway, that's probably going to take about 4 months. The other bridges, there's also community outreach, same type, not that same level, because we're really, the bridge is staying in place. We're just doing improvements, or in the case of Creek, more substantial improvements in terms of seismic retrofit. And so that's what it really means for phase one. So again, we're not predisposed to replacement. That's something decision has not been made. It's been made at the state level because it's eligible, but it hasn't been made at a staff or council level. We know we need input from the community. We definitely have a substantial comprehensive outreach program to gain that information. And what we're looking at in terms of the overall cost is the cost is $479,000. Of that, our matching fund is only $26,000. So it's a situation where we've highly leveraged funds to give us an opportunity to really explore the situation for Meadowway and the other bridges. And so with that, that pretty much concludes the staff report. We're recommending approval. And we also have the consultant here, Nader Tremaine, the principal with CIC, here to answer any questions you may have specifically related to Meadowway or the other bridges.
Can I?
Well, okay, I'm supposed to go last, so, you were asking. I thought I had a question also, but go ahead, Renee.
I was just wondering for a little more background for those who aren't familiar with any of this bridge talk is how were these 5 bridges determined to be the ones for this from the Highway Bridge Program?
Oh, turned it off. You have to meet basic requirements to be eligible, and obviously Mr. Tremaine could get into that level of detail. But these bridges are on the National Bridge Inventory because they meet minimum standards for span and some other criteria to be on the list. And then it goes further. Each bridge actually has a rating, I think, per the state on functional obsolescence, structural deficiency, and that makes it what's qualified in terms of eligibility and which program it could fall under. And so in this case, again, we have Meadowway qualifies as replacement, Creekside seismic retrofit. The others are maintenance, and they fall into different categories. Creek, interesting enough, Creek Bridge is actually at this point 100% funded for all phases. Should we choose to go that way, we don't have to put in any matching funds. It's 11.5% in preliminary design for Meadow and for the BPMP, and that's why the math works out to just $26,000 for this first phase.
Okay, and here's my question. Phase 1 has the study for all 5 of these bridges all lumped together. Once we identify the various issues and what kind of plans seem to make sense for us as a community, are they all lumped together in phase 2?
They're only lumped together in terms of it's one contractor, it's one engineering firm. Each project, though, has its separate funding source. Each project will have its own decision-making time. You can't mix funds, so funds for Meadowway can't be used for any other program, vice versa. So just for purposes of just one contractor, or I should say engineering firm to perform all the work, there's just one firm. But each bridge will have a separate path, just based on the different aspects of the bridge. Ultimately, each bridge will probably have a different schedule for development, although we anticipate you're looking at 24 to 36 months to actually complete either project.
But so in essence, what you're saying is we have local control over what actually happens, and then this first phase 1 is basically giving us the money to figure out the information that we need to make a decision.
That's correct, because you have to decide to move forward with phase 2 for each phase. We'll have to go to Caltrans to get approval for each phase, and so there's a variety of steps and very many checkpoints for the council and the community to chime in.
Yeah. Barbara?
So we've spoken a few times about particularly the Meadowway project, and it is unfortunate the way the bid documents are read, because it does read, unless you really, I've read every page and did see that we were just looking at assessment on Meadowway, which I think is important, because I think really having those discussions with the community in the area with a real open mind and with informed information, which is what the assessment will give us, is good. But I think one thing I'm wondering about is Caltrans is giving us this funding with the idea that we have to bid them all as, the full boat. If we, on Meadowway, get through phase one of the assessment and through our community interaction opted for no replacement or some minor tweaks, are we going to be asked to refund the money for phase one for Meadow Way?
Actually, that's a question I should ask Mr. Tremaine, but I don't think so.
Microphone.
If you come up to the microphone, then it'll be on the record, and it'll help people not in this room understand what's going on, so thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nader Tamaneh. I'm the president of California Infrastructure Consultancy. To answer your question, the program, Highway Bridge Program, is highly deferential to the local needs and opinions and wants and desires. So as far as I know, if we go through phase one and the decision is not to go through with replacement, which is what the money is slated for, they would understand that. However, we couldn't use the money for repairs. The program has very specific definition, and the bridge falls in the category of funding that deals with replacement. It has a sufficiency rating of 40 out of 100 and is functionally obsolete. That qualified it for replacement money. And so through this phase one, as Garrett mentioned, we'll study the condition of the bridge and make it sort of a broad assessment of the bridge for various loading, if you will, seismic, scour, various kinds of safety issues, and we'll put that report in front of the public and yourselves and help the town decide what the direction should be at that point. But as far as I know, if the community decides the bridge shouldn't be replaced, something else should be done, I think we all go back to square one and decide, to take a different course.
A clarification, I'm not sure I heard this correctly. So in doing this assessment, we'll get good information about the structural soundness of the bridge through various scenarios. And if in our discussions with the community, and we feel it's appropriate to not replace that bridge, did I hear you say that if we decided to do some type of repairs, we could not use that funding for repairs?
That's correct.
Okay. But the phase one will get us the information to make an informed decision working with the community. And then if the decision is not to replace, then we can look at other options and other sources of funding potentially.
Yes, let me please elaborate on first part of your statement. If this bridge is functionally obsolete and it's got a low score because it has certain deficiencies, the program is here to address those deficiencies. So the money can be used to address those deficiencies, and those are a variety of deficiencies. So and get rid of those, get them off the books, and so that the bridge is no longer flagged as deficient. So I wanted to make sure actually that I've explained that. So replacement is a form of correcting deficiencies. That's one form. The other forms, the money is can be used to go back and pick every one of problems that exist with the bridge and one by one correct them if that ends up being a feasible option.
I'm sorry. I think I didn't understand that, because it sounded like you said that that money wouldn't be available if it wasn't used for replacement, but then you said we could fix the deficiencies one by one with that funding?
So again, the program made the money available to the town for under the bridge replacement rules. From what I understand, if we prepare this study and identify all the deficiencies and recommend whatever we recommend, replacement or an assessment of what it takes to correct those deficiencies, the program will go along with that, as far as I know. So if I didn't make it clear at first, I should correct it.
Maybe we should ask Garrett, because I think I'm getting confused. And it sounds like you said there's a range of things that are considered under replacement, so potentially some things we could fund rather than a wholesale replacement. Garrett, could you elaborate?
Yeah, I think we're jumping ahead to what would be explored in, I think we have too many. Oh, there we go. That's what caused the problem.
Just
Sorry.
tends to feedback.
I think we're jumping a little too ahead, because in phase one, when you explore your options, we will also explore the funding possibilities for those very options. So we'll have clear answers for how you want to proceed. If it's decided that, no, we don't want to replace it, we want to do X, we'll have something that explains what exactly that means. So we'll have more clarity on what federal funding can be used for, what's not allowed under federal funding, and what some other options are. So I'm a little concerned we're trying to jump in, just try to see specific details, when that's something actually that will come out in the process, and perhaps that will be addressed better then, because I hate to put Nader on the spot for something we're not completely sure. He seems sure, but we'll have more details, because some things you may want to do as we go through the process, we may not actually be able to do for X, Y, and Z reasons, but until we actually know, I would like to wait and then have the answers then, because then we won't have to backtrack where we said something and then we are unable to perform. So that would just be a recommendation at this time.
Makes sense. Yes, Larry?
This phrase "functionally obsolete" has come up, and what's that mean? Are there certain definitions that render a bridge functionally obsolete? That's my first question. My second question is any one-lane bridge considered functionally obsolete just because it's a one-lane bridge?
A one-lane bridge is not a standard federal or Caltrans bridge, so it automatically lowers the score. Canyon Road Bridge, that was repaired, or the deck was replaced on that a few years ago. Essentially, it became a brand new bridge, but right out of the gate.
That's considered functionally obsolete, even though it's a brand new bridge.
That's correct. Again, it has to do with safety. It has to do with federal standards, pedestrian safety, automobile safety. So that automatically begets a negative score for being one lane, because it's considered in the federal lexicon deficient. That's correct, but it's not the end of the world. Canyon Road Bridge is, I believe it has a sufficiency rating of in the 80s, so that's a good number out of 100. It didn't lower it so that it was totally useless or so deficient that it had to be looked at again. The Meadoway Bridge is a different story. It has other factors that contributes to its functional obsolescence. Each element of the bridge, superstructure, substructure, rails, various components, structural components of the bridge are inspected. This bridge is on the national inventory, and it's inspected once every 2 years. And Caltrans rates its various elements and assigns the scores to different structural and safety elements of the bridge. So it has an algorithm for the sufficiency rating number and a weight for the different elements that contribute to the overall deficiency. This bridge currently has a sufficiency rating of 44. I said 40, but it's 44 out of 100, and it's flagged as functionally obsolete.
And is Caltrans or the federal government funding replacement of an existing bridge with an existing one-lane bridge with a one-lane bridge?
We faced that issue when we applied for the money for the bridge back. It's been about 6 years since the funding has been in, the request has been in circulation with Caltrans. And they questioned the replacement because we submitted some preliminary plans for the funding, and they questioned that, and we actually used the justification of the precedent that was set by Canyon Road, as well as the very low traffic volume that uses this bridge as justification for, considering a one-lane bridge if the bridge were to be replaced. And so they funded the bridge under those explanations. If we go back and the community decides that the bridge should be replaced, and we present a one-lane bridge to Caltrans during the preliminary stages, we will still have to provide further justification for what they call design exception. So it is granted if it's properly.
But we have to meet the criteria.
Maybe
The project would have to meet certain criteria to get that exception.
Yes, for example, lane width has to be proper. Safety, pedestrian, non-motorized safety has to be guaranteed through sidewalk or space for folks to use the bridge on foot or on bicycles. Yes, we do have to enumerate the reasons why the bridge should be one lane and fight that battle for the design exception.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I think, yeah. Well, if there's no further questions from the council or staff to you, I think I'd like to open it up to the public, because there's more to say, I'm sure. So if anybody would like to comment on this, please come forward.
I'm Nancy Wasserman. I live at 1 Meadow Way. Excuse me. In regards to the design of the bridge, and just in reflection of some of the things that he just said, many of us feel that the bridge could use reinforcement and replacement, but at its current capacity, the Meadowway Bridge has a load limit of 32 tons and services approximately 29 houses. And all, as you know, they're two dead-end streets. The Canyon Road Bridge, which we were just told has a sufficiency rating of 80, is a one-lane bridge, and it has no shoulder for pedestrians, and it still has a sufficiency rating of 80. And it has a load limit of 22 tons, but it services over 37 houses. It also provides access to the Elliott Preserve, so it also has increased automobile traffic because it's access to the open space. So Enlarging the Meadoway Bridge to 2 lanes would be totally unnecessary and increases the potential damage to the surrounding properties, the creek banks, and eliminates the only parking in the area. So if the Canyon Bridge was able to be approved and has a sufficiency rating of 80, it services more houses, it has more traffic, and it has less of a load limit than Meadoway. It seems to me that we could, it could be sufficient to have a 1-lane bridge over Meadoway as well, and perhaps reinforce it or whatever repairs it needs to bring it up to more of a code. So I just urge you to really think about examining the idea of overbuilding the bridge and the potential damage to the area if it was a 2-lane bridge seems like an overbuilding for the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members from the public who would like to speak to this?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Frank Ager, a 50-plus year resident of 13 Meadoway. To answer Larry's question, a 1-lane bridge is functionally obsolete. The National Register lists both Canyon Road Bridge and Meadoway Bridge as functionally obsolete. The entrance to the neighborhood is a wooden bridge as you come down Meadow past the Thompsons and the Wassermans. There are oaks, bays, and buckeyes on either side of the wooden bridge. Every visitor to our home over the past 50 years has commented how they love the little wooden bridge they cross. It defines our neighborhood. It is the epitome of old Fairfax. Unfortunately, the neighborhood has never been notified officially of the plans to replace the bridge with a new concrete bridge. With the construction of a temporary bridge crossing, all vegetation in the vicinity of the bridge will be removed. There are 2 functionally obsolete public bridges at Fairfax, both the subject of tonight's contract. Canyon Road Bridge, a fairly new concrete bridge, and of course the Meadoway Bridge. And of course the reason being they are 1 lane. The functionally obsolete Canyon Bridge will be retrofitted. The functionally obsolete Meadoway Bridge will be replaced. A 2-lane concrete bridge will require 2 lanes of traffic approaches within 300 feet of the bridge on either side. That is a Caltrans requirement. All public parking the first block of Meadow will be eliminated. The contract before you sets the ball in motion, includes an EIR and public meetings with consultants and bureaucrats. We need outreach meetings with our elected officials, not consultants. If Canyon can be retrofitted, so can Meadoway. Replace the wood deck and the wooden sides, and the bridge is good for another 50 years. A private consultant has recently inspected the bridge and believes this is a viable option. The approval of the contract before you tonight is a project under California Environmental Quality Act, and as such, it should not go forward without the completion of an environmental checklist. 4 listed species are within the project area: coho salmon, steelhead trout, and red-legged frogs, plus a mountain lions that traverse the creek under the bridge. The contract authorizes an EIR on an undefined project. I ask that the Meadoway portion of this contract this evening be continued until such time as the council has met with the neighborhood, completed environmental checklist. It's imperative that nothing larger than a 1-lane bridge with pedestrian/bike path should ever be there. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Alexander Binnick, 7 Meadow. In the interest of respect for town residents and for participatory democracy, the town really should have done initial outreach and arranged for a meeting with Meadoway residents before the issue of this consulting study was placed on the agenda. so we could, as a group, discuss the implications and sort out exactly what we wanted to be studied, if anything. Sadly, that wasn't done. We weren't even notified that this item was on tonight's agenda. To partially rectify that lapse, I'm asking you to not approve the CIC contract as it stands tonight, to defer that decision. Instead, please have staff ask CIC how much they would charge to study replacing the other bridges, but not the Meadow Way one, and also how long afterwards would the town have to be able to add the Meadow Way Bridge back as an amendment to the contract without encouraging any charge beyond the $479,000 max of the present contract. Doing this would give us neighbors 1 or more months to first talk together and evaluate whether, in fact, most of us do want a brand new bridge, or if we would instead prefer a rehabilitated or retrofitted one, such as a new roadbed over the current bridge supports, or the current bridge given preventive maintenance. Federal programs exist to provide funds for all of these options, different federal programs, but the study this contract would fund would only examine the replacement alternative, the one involving the most extreme actions and consequences. We already know that in November 2007, the current bridge received a nearly perfect score for bridge strength, 99.51 out of 100. So that is not an issue. What is a big issue for the neighbors is the question of fire. I'm intending to arrange a meeting soon between neighborhood residents and fire prevention experts with the county and Ross Valley Fire to get the experts' evaluations of whether our present wooden bridge presents any danger to traffic by fire trucks or residents in the event of a firestorm. By the way, in years past, I did speak with representatives of both those agencies. It came out and they gave my wife and me assurances that the bridge was fine in that regard, but I think we all deserve to have an update in the whole neighborhood. I'd like to have that happen soon. And I think that can take place directly by the appropriate experts without having to rely on a consulting firm. If most of the local residents ultimately decide we want to consider alternatives short of outright bridge replacement, Fairfax could apply the $18,500 of town funds that would have been wasted initially in the now pending study to studying those other options. That is the sensible and respectful way to proceed. Slow down the train. There's no need for adoption of this contract tonight. Allow us to meet first and then meet with us. After that, there's time to initiate studies. Other cities may tend to make political decisions with only limited input by its residents. Fairfax claims to do things differently. We hope in this case you will put early citizen involvement ahead of bureaucratic process. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Michelson, and I'm at 6 Meadow Way, and I am not as organized as my neighbors. But one thing I've done is talk to some people who have a very cynical attitude about this because they've lived there long enough that they've been through a process where apparently this whole thing has come up 2 or 3 times. And so basically I have a question for all here. What has happened in the past that caused this same set of issues to occur with no resolution and for it to have gone back into the pot of things that then get brought up several years later? 2 people have said, we've been through this before, nothing happens, they send somebody out to do these evaluations, and so I'm curious, I mean, we've been there since 1960, but I wasn't of an age that I could, that I was tuned in to what was going on in the town. So I would like to know that, and I would like to say that I agree with everything they have said, and that I'm most concerned that the funding from Caltrans is going to tie us in some fashion to an outcome in order for the monies to be made available. And I think, to me, that's the nub of the issue. And most of us are concerned, I think, too, that we want to know if there is a bottom line as to what we have the power to affect. We want to know what that is, rather than dinking around and pretending that we're going to do a lot of community outreach. Come on, let's be real here. If there's a bottom line, let's be truthful about what the bottom line is and tell us, so that we don't spin our wheels on a bunch of stuff that really can't have an effect. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Larry.
That's okay. Could I just respond real quickly to your comment? My understanding, and this is to Alex too, my understanding of what we're doing is assessing the condition of the bridge so that we can make decisions in collaboration with the neighborhood. I'm very concerned about Frank's comment about us needing an environmental checklist, and I would definitely like to get some input from our town attorney whether we need to sort of step back and assess whether we need to take that step before we do this. But as I read the document, contrary to the concerns that it's a fait accompli, that it's going to be replaced with a 2-lane bridge, and you know, we're going to be looking at a real change in the character of the neighborhood, which I think is why we're here as electeds, to represent your interest and, you know, come up with a solution or come up with a plan that makes sense for everybody and not just impose some kind of bureaucratic structure on the neighborhood. But what I wanted to point out is that within the document that we're considering tonight, if you go to page 12, task 10.21, it talks about, it will also include retrofit strategy report. Let me just see. This is actually on Creek Road Bridge, but I think we've got the same language on Meadow about whether it's feasible to retrofit the bridge, how and for how much, or if the bridge should be replaced. So there's alternative language in this thing, and my understanding of what we're doing is gathering information about the bridge and about the community to decide how to move forward. And I think the process that is considered in this document, it's not just window dressing or dinking around with public meetings. I mean, I think we're committed to listening to the neighborhood. Obviously, your neighborhood is very concerned about this bridge, loves the bridge, loves the character of the bridge, and I think those are all extremely important things for us to consider as we move forward. So I guess what I'm saying is it seems to me that we're at a preliminary stage of gathering all that information in so that we can make the right decision, and that the community input is not just window dressing as far as I'm concerned. I think it's very important. It's the money that we need to spend to find out, put all the options on the table, or find out what the options are and come up with the best solution or the best outcome for everybody.
We don't know that CIC will, without our first discussing this, will come up with some of the options that we might want to have explored. It would be much more helpful if we could present a few different possible options and see if they could include that in their study. This way we don't know what kind of options they're going to come up with.
Okay, well,
We haven't had any kind of collaboration.
Well, because we are at the beginning of the process. I mean, we are at the beginning of that process, Alex. So I understand that the neighborhood is upset that it wasn't invited in earlier, and I hear that. that we may have needed to do further outreach just to get to this point. So well, we'll see if there is one.
Michael McIntosh.
If I can, maybe some clarification for the residents and for the council.
Okay.
Now, the total amount isn't necessarily all for Meadow Way. The majority of it's actually for Creek Road, $250,000, which is covered by the grant. But yes, to be clear again, it's an assessment to get the information needed to explore the different options of what the neighborhood would like to do. It's very clear to staff that we know what the neighborhood's concerns are in the sense that it's been pointed out to us. In fact, when we did the interviews with the consultants, we talked about these type of things and actually said, you know, you cannot have a 2-lane bridge, but can we build a bridge ultimately that reflects the character of the neighborhood as well as just has 1 lane, maybe a pedestrian lane, maybe a bike lane, but is that a possibility? And the answer was, yes, we can. Obviously, you'll have to make some justification to Caltrans, but that is a possibility. But more importantly, we made it very clear to the consultants that the neighborhood's very concerned. We cannot have a situation where we're starting off predisposed. Yes, we had to get the money, go down a certain path, but we've broken it into 2 phases, or more phases actually. And phase 1 is just an assessment. It's assessment to make sure everyone knows what condition the bridge is in. And at that time, if you want to explore other options like, well, what would it look like with 1 lane or whatever, we do have money in for that. But you need the base information to see what we can do. And if the decision is made that, well, given these conditions, we really want to see if you could just replace this and that, keep the bridge, you know, whatever it is, we'll be able to explain at that time the funding sources available to do what you like to do. And the possibility exists the federal funding can be used, or the possibility exists the federal funding can't be used. Then we'll have to explore other options for funding. But I'd just like to make it clear that as staff, we were very aware. We weren't trying to push anything without having a public process. We actually put in a lot of hours for public process. This contract that we have, actually, when you break it down, when we're at the end of the day, design costs is equivalent of 50% of the hard costs because we have built in so much money in for public outreach, environmental, into making sure we're doing everything that reflects what's respected in Fairfax. And I've been here 6 months, so I understand somewhat what's really anticipated and expected. And I understood from day one that the Meadow Way Bridge would create some level of controversy and we needed to be aware and treat it properly. And so from my perspective, yes, I do apologize. I didn't send emails out and try to give you more of background of what we're trying to do. But it was like kind of so much a catch-22, and I was trying to get it so we have the money so we could start the process. That being said, there is always the option you can pull this part out of the contract. It would be a little confusing off the scope of work. But you could do that. The only caveat is to keep the money obligated, you do have to spend some money over a 6-month period of time. I'm sure we can come up with something. But again, we really wanted the money so we could start the conversation, let people know, get everybody the facts, because from a staff perspective, it's very important we all understand what condition the bridge is in. And based on that, if we have different perspective, I think that's fine, and then the council will decide how to move forward. But again, I'm just want to clarify that point.
So, Garrett, you said something very interesting, but you said it very fast, which is that the assessment can provide everything from do nothing to do some things to replacement. In other words, from A to Z, from soup to nuts, and it is an opportunity to sit down and fully assess the bridge and its standard, but not necessarily to replace it, but also to look at the options for shoring it up or improving it in some way as it sits or stands right now, which is, I think, the consensus of what I hear the community raising, but it keeps on getting glossed over, that there are no preconceptions by the town, and this is a fact-gathering exercise that will allow us to then have the more substantive conversation that we can't have absent the wealth of information that this will provide.
That was a very good summary.
Renee.
I mean, I think that we should answer the question about and what's the feasibility of actually pulling that piece so that we do give ample time for this conversation to happen in the neighborhood and really have input. I mean, can we explore the feasibility of that in terms of what that does to our funding and the timing and how we have to spend it over the 6 months so that we can address this request?
Sure, you can, I could say at this moment, you could pull it out. It would just, we just have to restructure the agreement and figure out how to pull that aspect out or just put that part on hold and proceed with the others. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it, because otherwise it gets really confusing, because we'd have to add it back in if we decided a month from now to go through the whole process. But
What about, rather than pulling it out, just delaying it? Is that you move the schedule completely to delay it, the start of even the study part, and then there's time to meet with the community first to get their input, so that when we build the study, we could build it with that input and understand some of the things that were raised tonight. We don't know everything. Our consultant seems very knowledgeable, but maybe we keep it in the project, but we just delay the start a couple of months so that we have more time to gain facts from the residents. So when we actually put the study together, we have kind of a better grounding.
But actually, does that mean that we delay only that piece? Are there other concerns from the neighborhoods around the other bridges?
actually, I haven't heard from anyone in any of the other neighborhoods related to the other bridges.
So my question would be, if we do that and we just delay it, do we delay the whole project, or can we delay this piece of it?
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
I think my initial take would be, what would happen is we just wouldn't do anything related to Meadow Way, and we do something with the other bridges. Is there some crossover? Perhaps, but I think it's quite doable. It shouldn't be an issue. The only caveat is, I know we need to spend some money over a 6-month period, but if, for example, if you wanted to have a community meeting, we could just have the community outreach person be a facilitator for that meeting, if that was something that we thought was prudent. So I think the idea and the concept from the council is a good one, because then we would have that flexibility to access that funding if you determined that you would like a facilitator. Or when you met with the neighborhood, they said, well, what about this? And then we would have the flexibility to ask the engineer to go, okay, go study this. They said it was something they need to understand better, and let's go study it. So it would give you the flexibility, or we could choose not to spend any money of that portion of the contract.
I mean, my impression looking at the scope of the project is that there's very much things to be done doing that, namely talking with the neighborhood around Meadow Way Bridge and figuring out what's desired and what the aspects people like, and basically informing the research that needs to be done later on down the road to figure out what's feasible. I mean, that's definitely spending money within 6 months, so.
And there really isn't a limit or threshold, I don't think. So you just need to spend, I think in the past for something, we just spent $1,000 to keep it active.
It should be no problem. It's government.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask one follow-up to the town attorney about the comment about us needing an environmental checklist before we approve this contract, whether what you're feeling about that objection is.
Well, when you do go out to do an inspection, say for structural integrity, you can go do that portion, you can do that part of it, you can inspect for structural integrity without doing the environmental work initially, but anything past that, and I'm really not that clear as to exactly what's going to happen. If it's just an inspection just an inspection for structural integrity, you can certainly do that portion.
What about examining design alternatives and that type of thing?
It is, but environmental informs that.
So at some point or another, whether it's right now or if we take some preliminary steps, design steps, whatever, CEQA is going to be invoked. Mm-hmm. We have to comply with CEQA.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. The environmental for the whole project is actually obviously covered in this project.
It's part of the project.
It's part of the project.
Okay.
Ultimately.
I have one follow-up. So in my work, typically studies and assessments are not a project under CEQA. But once you start getting into really planning the construction phase is when you would really be doing the checklist. But right now, based on my review, it looks like it's really studies, not, and maybe preliminary design, so not a real design, but a preliminary design so you could present options before you actually approve something to go forward. So preliminary design work of saying a one-lane bridge with a bike path or something like that, which is not a real design document, but it's a more conceptual design, typically does not involve a CEQA project or doing a checklist, but anywhere beyond that where you're going forward into full design phase, that's where I would draw the line. But let me go back on one question, and that's just my experience, which is different, is one potential idea is going forward approving this with the idea that we delay the start of any studies on Meadow Way a month or 2 months so that we could meet with the community, get their input on some of the things that were brought up today, the bridge strength, the concerns that people have, so that before we embarked on a study, we really understood the concerns, because sometimes we in government tend to move forward on studies thinking we understand all the different facets and we miss something. So I think for us to move forward and study, it's better to get a really good understanding of the issues that people have in the area. Maybe even broader folks who just use the area might have an interest. And then I think we could frame that study and make sure that we don't have to go back, you know, that we're not wasting time on the study. So we really knew what we were looking into. That's my 2 cents.
I'd also like to bring back to you, Michael. I know you've been standing there thank you for being patient. And
Not a problem. I, for one, also appreciate when my issues are addressed and heard, so I could not fault anybody when their issues are also heard. What I was going to offer is, I hope that the whole community looks at whenever we have an opportunity to replace a bridge, it's not for today and it's not for ourselves. It's really for our future generations to ensure the success and the future success of our town, because it's really an asset that holds our whole town and community together, no matter what the future might bring. But at the same time, the comments I heard are also very well placed. I think that the charm of our town is not by having some big old ugly behemoth that takes over the environment, and the wood bridge at Meadow is a wonderful looking bridge. I know that when I submitted my bridge to this program and you guys didn't want it, putting that aside, actually Nader approached me. The first thing I asked Nader is, I said, I don't want some big behemoth, and he said no. Part of this grant program will actually allow for the design so it can look the exact same, because I said I want it to look the exact same. So I would actually, I would encourage the council to ask Nader if maybe that the bridge that could be replaced or needs to go in there or be retrofitted, whatever you want to call it, actually look the same. Why couldn't it be done with wood? If the last bridge has lasted 100 years, wouldn't it be really cool to have an architectural component in our town that's the same wood, and then we still have our infrastructure for the next 100 years? I think that might also address and alleviate the concerns I've heard this evening. But I, for one, would also like to see part of the charming history of our community of a wood bridge. But I also understand the need of securing our assets for not us, but for our future generations, which ensures the success of this town.
thank you.
My name is Stephen Wasserman. I live at One Meadow Way. A couple of things. I think what Barbara just said, I thought was well taken with regard to how we should proceed, and what the other people have said before. I really think we need the input of the community before we decide to have some kind of assessment. I can tell you that I never received a notice about anything about this bridge. I live at One Meadow Way. It clearly affects me. It used to be, when you lived in Fairfax, that if something was being done around your house, you got a postcard in the mail that said, you know, there's going to be a permit or this or that. No postcard, no letter, no nothing from the town to say that we're doing this. I had to find it out just walking on the street and talking to neighbors saying, oh, you know this bridge? They're going to do something with the bridge. So I think the communication that used to be where you got a postcard in your mailbox or something, I think really was missing in this. And I think that's an important aspect that you need to consider. And I think what Mr. Toy said about the controversy that's kind of come up only about Meadow Way, I think it's a little bit more about more than a controversy. It's a firestorm out there. I mean, I don't know one person who lives on Meadow Way who wants a two-lane bridge. And to spend money and time and effort, as Barbara said, on something that the community doesn't want is a waste. So if you have these community meetings and no one is in favor of that, then you don't have to study it. You don't have to get any kind of design. You don't have to spend as much money or whatever, and that's beneficial. The other thing is that I am also concerned about, maybe it's because I'm a lawyer, that, you know, when someone says it's 40% this or it's 20% that, I like to see the data. I want to see the raw data. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that that the Meadowway Bridge is a 40% something, whatever he said it was. And I was also concerned that he kept saying that Meadowway Bridge was, you know, structurally obsolete, until Larry asked him, well, isn't the Canyon Bridge is one lane? And he said, well, yeah, I guess that's structurally obsolete too. But he didn't say that before. He just kept kind of pounding on that as being an important aspect of it. So those are the kinds of things where you get the definition, and the state or the feds have this definition of being what's obsolete, and there's all these assumptions that go with that, when in fact that's not what the community wants, and that's not the definitions we believe are important. And I'm sure the criteria having to do with replacing the bridge also meets the criteria to repair it. And we skipped over repair. And I think it was also unclear between Mr. Toy and the president saying, well, you could use the money for this, or maybe you can't use the money for that. And so it's confusing, it's contradictory. I think people are guessing. And I'm not someone that really wants to guess at this point, especially when you have a community that seems to be really concerned about what's going to be assessed. And if you have an idea and you're going to do an assessment, that you have a self-fulfilling prophecy as to that assessment, because you know where you want to go. So I think those are the different kinds of things that I think are forward, that the council should really consider. And I think it's clear, Mr. Toy said it could be carved out, and I think that's important to do. And Barbara said also, it's clear you can spend $1,000 or $2,000 having community meetings. That's spending the money in 6 months. It's easy to do. And I would ask that the council do that. Thank you.
Press the button. Is it already on? I'm Deborah Benson. I live around the corner from Meadowway on Cascade Drive. Have for about 20 years. And I come from a part of the country where we maintained our wooden bridges. We had cover bridges. We honored them. We kept them. They worked. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And I have a question for the consultant. He mentioned 100 bridge replacement rules. Is that a real document that you could refer to in order to make recommendations to rule whether specific corrections could be made? Is that a real document, 100 bridge replacement rules?
I'm not sure if I mentioned
You did.
those words together.
Yeah. Is there such a document?
Question, I would
Okay.
again, I would try to clarify.
Okay, I would suggest that if there is such a document, that we take a look at it and consider the neighbors' feelings and desires, and see whether a study is even worthwhile. If, for instance, a wooden bridge is not in one of the rules, or a one-lane bridge or whatever, I think our neighborhood is functionally obsolete. We don't have sidewalks, We don't have a lot of street lights. It's old, it's woodsy, and the bridge fits it. I'm kind of shy about speaking in public, so that's all.
Yeah, I think that comment actually sums up a lot of it. I mean, Fairfax is functionally obsolete, and a lot of us love it that way. And, you know, I should also say that it's federal and state money is kind of framed to, you know, make things conform to the rollover curb, you know, Central Valley model of, you know, connect everything with freeways and everybody's spread out all over the place, and it doesn't look at all like Fairfax. And, you know, frankly, you can have that, but unfortunately, that's the world of government that we live in, and if there is an opportunity, I mean, I don't know what the foundation, I mean, I can speak for myself, but my impression is that nobody up here on this council wants to change the bridge from the way it looks. I don't think there's anybody in the room like that. But if the foundation for it is, I mean, if it's rated at 32 tons and that's accurate, then that's great. But if the foundations for it are being undermined by the stream, and there's something that we can do to fix that, to preserve the bridge that we have, and we can use this opportunity of getting some federal money to do that, and we have to jump through these hoops to enable that money to flow to Fairfax, you know, then I think we have to jump through the hoops, not build a 2-lane bridge that's a concrete overpass looking kind of thing, but see how we can work the money system so that we can get some money for Fairfax to keep it the way we like it. And I think that that's what has been attempted here, and I don't think there's been an attempt to make an end run around what people want. And that's, go ahead,
May I
Renee.
actually ask for a clarification from the public? And what we're all saying up here, does it resonate that that is a good course of action? That if we were to take this step to delay and then really get a sense of what is going on with the neighbors and the wishes of the neighbors, and then see if we proceed in that funding is already procured for a study. Does that seem like a logical chain of events? Is that, I just want to make sure we're all talking the same language in terms of what we're trying to achieve. Because there's a lot of the same things being said, and I think there's a lot of support for what everybody's saying.
May I respond to Councilmember Renee Goddard's?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, and looking at that contract, I believe the contractor wrote the contract, not our town attorney. And I think you ought to continue it for 1 month, pull out the Meadowway portion of this contract, leave the dollar amounts, everything else the same, pull out the Meadowway portion and rewrite the Meadowway portion and take into consideration the concerns you've heard tonight and write those concerns into the contract specifically. And then come back next month and with a contract that addresses the Meadowway issues that the neighborhood has mentioned this evening, and how you will control what happens there, not the contractor.
Mr. Mayor, maybe a suggestion?
Yes.
Okay, so the town attorney and I, we've been talking more about this, and perhaps a way to look at this is the contract that's attached is an engineering contract. It's a standard form contract, so we're going to have to change that. So what we can do, if the council would like, is we can come back in September. We'll come back with the engineering design contract. Within that, we can modify the Meadowway bridge aspect of it to make it clear what the steps would be. And it sounds like one of the first steps would be, it's more of the public outreach. We'll have a public outreach part first that gets neighborhood input, and then we could start with the assessments. Because ironically, the funny thing is, not funny, but the postcards, the mailings, the website, the fact sheets, that's all in the contract, and that's what one of the first things that public outreach was going to do, was to do that, to engage the neighborhood, to make sure they understood we weren't doing something that they didn't want us to do. But apparently that didn't work out very well. So, but the suggestion then, we'll come back in September, we'll modify the scope of work for Meadow Way. Pretty much it's public outreach first, get that input, and then we could structure the other aspects of the scope of work, knowing that it'll be flexible depending on what the public input is, as well as the council direction. And then at that time, sounds like for Creek Road and the other BPMP bridges, that's probably okay. We can continue with that scope of work. So pretty much it means nothing will really happen, at least for contractually, until September. And then that would give us the staff resources to send out the postcards, conduct the meeting, and then I assume the neighborhood would probably have some suggestions for things we should study. We'd have the ability then to do that at that time. So that's hopefully, I think that's what Mr. Ager was alluding to, and hopefully addresses that concern, some of the neighborhood's concerns, and allows us to come back again in September with something that better addresses the concerns of the council and the neighborhood.
That makes sense. It wouldn't surprise me if other neighborhoods, I mean, they don't have as beautiful a bridge as the Meadowway Bridge, but they may have something to say. I think basically what we're dealing with is an engineering contract that's a boilerplate that's designed much as the same as state regulations, that Fairfax is not duplicated all over the place, which is one of the reasons why we all live here. So,
Can I respond to Renee's question? Thank you. Thank you for asking it. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Barbara, for the things that you've been saying tonight. My concern is, I don't know how the contract would be rewritten exactly. Again, to me, maybe it's just because I'm a layperson. I don't understand these things, but it seems to me that if we neighbors have a chance to first talk with each other a little bit, even before we are in some kind of facilitated dialogue with the town, and say, okay, here are we might like to see these 3 or 4 different things, possibilities from doing the minimum to doing the maximum. You know, the maximum's still with one-lane bridge, but nevertheless, you know, major disruption, major noise, major difficult use of crossing, and we live right next to the bridge. We're the closest of any of the neighbors right to that bridge. Things will be just about impossible for us for 1 to 2 years, personally, if a whole replacement goes through. But I'm trying to speak on behalf of the neighborhood in general, not just myself. I think if we can begin by seeing what 3 or 4 things we would prefer to have studied, and then come to the town with that, and then that can be put specifically into the contract, that would make sense, rather than say, okay, approve this contract, and then we'll have this outreach and meet with you, and then we'll see what we can do once the contract is signed with certain language to try to fit this in and jerry-rig it. It doesn't smell good to me. It doesn't make sense. What's the rush to do it that way? It seems like there are better ways to proceed. So that's my thought.
I have a question. So, well, I have a question for Garrett and Janet, but question for you, Alex, is do you think the residents would have time to meet in the next couple of weeks, just amongst yourselves without anyone there, to sort of frame the kinds of things that you would like considered? And then I think one thing I want to be clear on is that whatever assessment is done, I would like to have considered the options that you would like considered as the residents, but also other options that may not be, and I'm not saying a concrete bridge, I'm saying potentially replacement. So we get a full range of options, and we as a community can make a decision based on the best information we have. So if it's possible for you all to meet in the next couple of weeks and kind of frame those issues, and then what I wanted to ask Garrett and Janet, with your idea of coming back in September, could you write that portion of the contract to include, if you could meet with the residents before September, to include the elements that they would want considered in addition to potentially other elements that we want considered in addition. Do you think that could be done by September, or do you think the contract could be written in such a way that you could have the flexibility to add those elements to the scope of work if we don't have it totally fine-tuned by September?
The contract now actually builds in that flexibility for the different options because the process was assessment and then explore options. The only caveat is it's finite in a number of options. We can't explore, I don't know if there's 20 options out there, but we don't have the resources to explore 15, 20 different options. But there is flexibility there, so we don't need to be that specific. And what we can do also, depending if it's of great concern to the council and to the neighborhood, we do have flexibility to modifying the scope of work to change some other things to some other things. Because like I said, we've built in a lot of money into public outreach, which included the postcards, the website, and all these lots of other things. And depending, if we wanted to narrow down what we're doing, or we wanted to explore some more options, we could always take it from somewhere, other scope of work item. I don't know what that would be. So you have that flexibility. I don't know if you have to upfront decide on the specific things. We know in our mind, we knew that it was going to have to still remain a one-lane bridge. And so we never contemplated it being a two-lane bridge.
I think there's a couple of things. I think I'm sensing there's a mistrust that we will include the options that the community wants. And I think from what I heard, maybe there's 4 or 5 things. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think there's a level of mistrust that if we don't include at least some of the options that the community has to date, that won't get done. I think you're hearing, though, from the council, pretty much all of us have spoken, that nobody has any interest up here, and I don't believe staff as well, of doing an end run.
No, I'm not concerned about that personally. Others might be. But I feel it makes sense to do things in a way that makes sense step by step. And to respond to a couple things that you mentioned, we haven't all met yet. So I don't know what ideas would be generated that would become popular and so on to explore. For example, if this is supposedly a study about a replacement project, then how about the concept of keeping the bridge supports as they are and just putting a different roadbed on, because that's what tends to wear out the most anyway, and perhaps different railings or the same kind of railing structure or whatever. These are a couple, things that don't involve a major redo. I don't know whether those things can be included in a study that has to do with replacement.
I think it can, because one of the things it already has is an option of no replacement. So I think gradations of from replacement to no replacement, the way I read the contract is within that could be various options. Is that correct for our contract?
That's correct. Yeah, we had a no-build option and analyze life cycle.
But I guess the question is, so are there gradations from nothing to replacement?
Yeah, because as a part of the evaluation, you would evaluate all aspects of the bridge.
Okay, maybe we can can we cut to the chase here, because the hour grows long, we have a special meeting after this.
Yeah.
Alex, your points are well taken.
The other thing I wanted to respond to is within the next couple of weeks, that's a reasonable request, but I'm going to be out of town dealing with the medical thing myself. I also wanted to try to organize the neighbors, there are a lot of us, to meet with the fire officials. And I don't know, that will be outside of the bridge. I don't know that people will be able to hang out and make it a whole day to talk about these other things as well.
But we're not meeting until, I think it's September 7th, if I'm correct on this. Whatever our next council meeting is. The first one.
I would say definitely within the next 2 months, but the next month hopefully, but I couldn't guarantee that.
Garrett, can you talk to us about accommodating what Alex is talking about, giving the community the flexibility and the time to drill down on the points that are important to them, to be able to come back and communicate them to staff, so that when we then have the community meeting, the more formal meeting, their concerns, the community's concerns, are encapsulated initially, and then we bring them to the meeting with the consultant, and then we trigger the contract spinning forward to address all of the concerns.
That sounds great to me.
Makes sense.
we can
I
do
mean,
that.
But the question is, if Alex is correct, and, you know, people go on vacations, August is a funny time, it might not all take place by September 4th.
I think from our end, depends on the feedback we get and if it's comprehensive, because if we start and then we get more and then we have to change, but if we get it by a certain time, a week before the meeting, makes it a little tight.
See, but
we could do the
what Alex is saying is that because of the time frame in America in August is always a kooky time, that they might not be able to generate all of the outreach during that time period.
We will build as much flexibility into that contract to probably address all the issues they want us to address.
So, are you bringing the contract back in September or October?
We'd like to bring it back in September unless the neighborhood and, well, more so the council believes they need to allocate more time, then we'd bring it back in October.
Okay. Here's my concept. I think, I mean, I can see Janet working away there. I bet, given the depth of the conversation that we've had tonight, you get a pretty good idea of how to define a contract that will take the concerns of the community into account. And even if this contract starts running, if the first thing that happens is, you know, whatever is needed, 2 months or 3 months worth of just having the community figure out what, you know, having their conversation, and then having the following parts of the contract go. I mean, then it won't be holding up the whole process for everything, and the community will get the chance to have input that they need, and we'll have a contract that makes sense, that doesn't put us in a bind. Does that make sense? Is that possible?
Sure, we could craft something.
Okay. Do you need a motion from us? Or you just get direction to come back in September?
Well,
We have to continue, do we have to
with that
continue
contract.
this?
No, we'll come back to you in September with a new contract, in essence. New scope of work, different contract.
For Meadow.
For Meadow.
So we're going to call out the concerns, try to fold them into the contract that have been expressed tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
The scope of work for Meadow will be different than what you see here.
Okay. Okay.
The other two will remain the same for now.
Okay. Okay, so we'll be back September 4th? That's our next meeting?
Just making, I'm sorry, the town attorney pointed out just as one item of clarification. We are planning to have it as one consolidated contract. It would just be the phases for Phase 1 Meadow will be spelled out differently than it is in here and clear to address the concerns of the council and neighbors.
I believe that's what we're talking
And
about.
reflect public comment.
Public comment, great.
Just one quick thing, just because the schedules were done in color, you cannot read them, so if we could do those so that they could be black and white.
Well, yes, we're sorry, we apologize.
Yeah, it would just be
We'll put it in
helpful.
black, grayscale, black and white.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor, we have representatives of Marin Sand here who have waited patiently. Are you guys interested in all of the, or just the grand jury report? There are two ordinances dealing with solid waste and the grand jury report. I want to get these guys out of here. All three or just one?
I'd like to.
Okay.
Okay, I'd love to take a break now. It's 5:10. Let's come back at 10 o'clock. All right, I'd like to call us back into order. We have 4 things left on the agenda. It's 10 o'clock, or 10:10 actually. We have 2 ordinances dealing with waste and grand jury report and adoption of policies filling vacancies at boards and commissions.
Can we put off 16 from last time? Unless it's
That's the boards and commissions one.
Sure, that's fine.
Any other feelings about that one?
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
About that one for the Planning Commission? The number 16?
Yes.
You had put it off just, I think it was just for the Planning Commission. There are 2 vacancies, and I know we have 2 applications. So does this mean you don't want us to bring the applications back to September 4th until you've considered this item?
I don't know that there has been a conversation about significantly changing the planning commission. I think we were just talking about the other boards and commissions.
No.
Is that correct?
Actually, you did have a discussion related to appointment of planning commissioners, and I did forget that you have 2 applications
Okay.
out there.
Yeah, well, if we have applications out there and people waiting, I don't think it would be a good idea to continue that then. I think that would.
We don't want to continue the planning commission hearings in September because they're running 2 people short and making decisions without a full
Well,
bank.
that's exactly my point. I think we need to not continue this item so that we can address it so that they can come to us in September.
Okay.
Everything else is there, and the grand jury response is.
Well, you're within, you need to take action tonight, so
We
we
need to
stay
take
within the
action
90
tonight
days.
to stay within the 90 days. So it looks like we're on. Okay. Let's just do this then. Number 13 is introduction, first reading of ordinance number 771, amending the municipal code by adding section 15.04.050, collection, recycling, and disposal of waste generated from construction, demolition, and renovation projects within the town of Fairfax. And is there a staff report on this that you want to talk about?
Yes, there is. We'll keep it brief. As background, back in March, Council directed staff to prepare a construction demolition debris program ordinance. Currently, how it's handled under our green building standards in the city code, town code, but it only applies to new construction. This would actually apply to all construction. In essence, it's a model ordinance that we use as guide prepared by the JPA. Actually, we received comments from Marin Sanitary. Very helpful because it reflects kind of the current state law. The Zero Waste Committee, consisting of Councilmember Bragman and Goddard, also reviewed it, felt it was okay to take forward to the council for approval. We are actually phasing it over to time to allow the contractors in the community and whoever else is pulling a building permit some time to get used to what's required, because it's additional paperwork, not so much for staff, but really for the applicants, because they're going to need to start filling out extra forms, as well as at some point they won't be issued a building permit without actually the proper forms and acknowledgement that they diverted the waste properly, otherwise they're subject to a penalty. And so with that concludes the staff report. I don't know if the members of the Zero Waste Committee would like to say something, and I don't know if Marin Sanitary would like to say anything about the ordinance.
Want to go first? Or at all?
Can I just ask a question?
Please do.
Because, I was thinking about it today, and I think it's good that we move forward with it, but this ordinance basically is taken from a model ordinance. Has the model ordinance been adopted by other communities in Marin County?
I had a matrix, but I didn't bring it.
Is that a question for Marin Sanitary? You should come up and get it in the record. There you go.
Now I can see. There have been several communities that have, I'm sorry, I'm Kim Shively, Marin Sanitary Service. Thank you for having us here tonight. There have been several other communities that have adopted the model ordinance. There were also several communities that already had ordinances before the JPA put the model ordinance together. So I believe there are only a few jurisdictions in Marin that have yet to come up with their own C&D, but C&D is a very important ordinance for a town to have. It's a substantial amount of materials. It's heavy material, large tonnage that really does help tip the diversion dial in the right direction.
Okay, thanks a lot. And the reason I brought it up is just to follow up on the point you made about introducing it in a somewhat gradual way so that people don't get slammed when they come in to pull a permit immediately, so that, you know, there's some fold-in time. So seems like there will be, and that it's becoming the standard in the industry in Marin. So that's kind of what I wanted to find out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, you know, the idea of passing an ordinance, but not, you know, really giving people tools, the contractors, as to how they're going to actually manage this diversion seems a little backwards to me. So I was hoping actually that Marin Sanitary might present a couple of the programs that are actually up and running, such as Roof to Roads. Give us just a brief little rundown of what is out there so that contractors out there listening are not thinking that this is just some kind of a gavel comes down and you got to fill out permits and make life really difficult, because this is driving new programs which have been very successful in diverting waste.
So some of the programs that are up and running right now are the carpet and drywall diversion. That's actually part of construction and demolition. Another one that just started is the asphalt shingle recycling program, which is brand new. And year to date, there have been 93,580 tons of asphalt shingles collected in the Resource Recovery Center. Before the material was diverted, it was going directly to the transfer station. And so we have a collaborative partnership between the JPA, the Marin Builders Association, and Marin Sanitary Service, where we've worked, done a lot of outreach with the contractors, the roofing contractors, to get them to source separate the materials, because it's really important that they're source separated. They can't contain any organic material in it, no wood, no metals, just the asphalt shingles. And so when they're source separated, then they come into Marin Marin Resource Recovery Center. The contractors are given a discount for having source separated, taken the effort to separate the materials. Then it is collected and bulked and then transported to a facility in Oakland that then processes it further, sends it to a batcher, who then finds contractors to purchase it to pave roads. So we're at the point now where we're actually trying to find a road to pave. We have several people who want them. We have a line, but then we always run up against Caltrans road specs, and people are afraid. They're afraid that their road might break because it doesn't meet specs. And but we're confident we're going to find somebody that we can practice on and see what happens. Really, Larkspur's really begging for it too. I wanted to pave Tamarancho, but that was just my own purpose.
Well, yeah, we can't promise anything there. Yes, Barbara?
The only thing I'm wondering about, often construction debris, sometimes asphalt shingles and such, has asbestos. So how are you guys, how is this working, you know, in the real world, to make sure that we're not sending materials that potentially have asbestos in them to the diversion? I was just kind of trying to understand how that worked.
So the roofers are given education on how to spot materials that would contain asbestos. And I'm not a roofer, so I've gone through the training with them, and supposedly it's easy to identify. But there is a check and balance system put into place. When it gets to Oakland, Oakland has to run extensive testing on, I can't remember the exact dimensions, but area about the size of the middle of this room, so it's not a very large amount, but every time they fill that small amount, they have to test it for asbestos before it gets sent off to a batcher and then into a road project.
And just to follow up on that now, so on the material that's getting sent to the landfill now, is that getting tested for asbestos?
No, I don't believe it is.
So it seems to me, even though there is that concern, which is a viable concern, at least we're addressing asbestos now.
Yes.
So it actually seems like we may be making an incremental improvement.
I think the roofers are supposed to do something with it before it gets to a landfill.
Yeah, well, I mean, there may be asbestos in the drywall that you're getting
True.
too.
Yeah,
So,
likely.
I mean, there's
If it's old enough,
asbestos is pretty well distributed,
Right.
unfortunately, so. But I mean, as it is now, it's not getting tested, it doesn't seem like,
Right.
from what you're saying, so.
It gets tested in Oakland before it gets sent to a batcher.
Correct,
Yeah.
when it's gonna get reused.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, Brian?
So it's, okay, it's good that it's being tested, but we really don't want to create friability. So my question is not really what happens as it leaves, but is our ordinance, and maybe this is more directed to staff or Renee who knows a lot about it, is are we making sure that before we start diverting waste anywhere that we're not taking drywall? And are we requiring that all waste goes? Because there are certain waste that should never go to a regular landfill. And so our ordinance would not require that everything go, that if there is materials that has asbestos, it can go to a landfill that can accept that, correct? Is that correct?
Very stringent.
Okay.
I would like Kim to speak to it because it's what she does, but I do know that the requirements are stringent and the testing is,
Yeah, I just don't want it to end up there. I want it, before it even goes there, that we're not requiring 100% diversion of stuff that never should have even been diverted.
and we have to look at the numbers too because it's not 100% diversion.
Okay, that's
No.
great.
Right now, there's only one material that is pretty much 100%, and that's concrete.
Yeah, and I guess my concern is also one that you brought up earlier, Renee, and I want to make sure that there's enough resources for the people who are going to be having to deal with this ordinance so that they, so they have the tools and the knowledge, this is how you do it, this is how you.
Yeah, so we did
divert
actually
things.
talk about this morning at the local task force meeting for the JPA. And there are a great number of resources. I forwarded several to Garrett today, and we're going to make sure that those materials, when that permit is applied for, and someone receives a permit that says these are the requirements, they're going to get information and resources as to how to deal with it, and so that it's understandable. And those the systems are in place. People have done the Cal Green training. There's a resource called Green Halo, which I also forwarded to Garrett today. So we will definitely make sure that there is not just a blanket ordinance thrown at contractors to make their lives more difficult.
And then when they come to resource recovery, they will receive information that they'll be able to report back to the jurisdiction for the diversion reporting.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? Is there any comment from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back here. And do I hear a motion?
Go ahead, Renee, you should do it.
I would like to move to approve the C&D ordinance.
Yeah. This
What did I
is
say?
first reading, correct?
Oh, this is a first reading. Sorry.
Yeah, so there is no motion, yeah.
I need to read the
So
recommendation.
is there a motion to waive further reading or
Move introduction.
move introduction?
That's what you do, I think.
Yeah, I've never done this before.
So if, to move it forward, Renee would move introduction and read the ordinance title into the record. That would be number 1. So why don't you do that?
Okay, I'd like to move
Just read that.
to introduce and read by title only ordinance number 771, an ordinance of the Town Council of Fairfax, amending the municipal code by adding section 15.04.050 concerning the collection, recycling, and disposal of waste generated from construction, demolition, and renovation projects within the town of Fairfax. And I would like to recommend to waive further reading of the ordinance.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, Goddard and a second Bragman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I believe that is unanimous. So thank you. And moving along, number 14 is introduction and first reading of ordinance number 772, amending the municipal code by adding section 8.08.130, establishing mandatory commercial recycling within the town of Fairfax. And do you want to launch the?
Sure, brief staff report. Again, as background, in March, the council directed staff to prepare a mandatory commercial recycling ordinance. State law actually requires that businesses by January 1st, 2012 take action to recycle or otherwise divert solid waste. This ordinance, again, was a model ordinance prepared by the JPA. Marin Sanitary did provide us their feedback based on AB 341, which is state law. Zero Waste Committee, again, consisting of council members Bragman and Goddard, reviewed the ordinance and recommending approval. I think one of the key differences between the town ordinance and model ordinance is the model ordinance applied to multifamily buildings of 5 or more units. The town ordinance is recommending applies to buildings with 4 or more units, and there's also covers recyclable, actually it covers organic materials in addition to recyclable materials. So it's different from the model ordinance that it covers organic materials. Again, we are recommending approval, and Zero Waste Committee members may also have comments, as well as Marine Sanitary.
Okay. Does members of the subcommittee Zero Waste Committee want to comment first? Unless you have.
Kim, do you want to present something on this while I collect my thoughts?
So when we met, discussed a model ordinance or an ordinance for mandatory commercial recycling with the town, the rationale for it was the state has the law AB 341, which says that any commercial business that generates 4 or more cubic yards of solid waste per week must subscribe to a recycling service of some sort. It also says that apartment units with multifamily units with 5 or more units are required to recycle regardless of the volume of waste they generate. Our system at Marin Sanitary for 65 years has been set up for just internally. We define multifamily units as anything with 4 or more. We're having a hard time. We would have to completely redo our database and the way we track and bill to get it to the state law of 5. So lowering it to 4 adds more people to the recycling mix, so more potential diversion, and then makes the accounting internally much easier to track. This ordinance also, you are the first jurisdiction in Marin County to actually go ahead and pass their own ordinance. Everyone else is going with the minimum requirements of the state. What this does, it allows the town to more accurately track and monitor the diversion that occurs in the town. And and we're very excited about it. It's a very well-written document. It will divert a lot more materials. It'll give much more accountability to the materials that move in and out of your town. And we're excited to be able to help. Fairfax, actually, we've been meeting with Cal Recycle. We had our first meeting a couple weeks ago, Garrett, I think, Cal Recycle. And at that time, there was one apartment and 2 businesses that were required by law to recycle that weren't. As of tonight, there are now 0. But there are 21 businesses. They're all businesses, right, Steve? 21 businesses that are not required to recycle that we're still going to outreach to. So we're going to let them know all the services we provide. We have signage. We can do hands-on sorting training. We can teach them, how to divert the materials that are in their business and get them out to the outside so that we can collect them and move them out of their garbage.
Sounds good.
And can I just add, when we were negotiating the franchise agreement 2 or 3 years ago, getting the multi-unit housing and commercial businesses sort of folded into this whole zero waste concept was one of our goals, and it's been a very difficult goal to attain or even to start managing it. There's just a lot of practical issues involved. So one of the first things, what we eventually came to is that we needed something to enforce that goal. Right. And that really is the genesis of the ordinance, so that we have some authority to persuade large multi-unit housing and commercial businesses to process their waste and recycle. So this is that vehicle, and hopefully it can be introduced in a way that's not too harsh and will be accepted as a part of best practices. So I do think it is kind of a path-breaking thing that we're doing, and hopefully it'll be something that will become part of doing business, not only in Fairfax but throughout Marin.
And I just wanted to also call attention to something in the franchise and the contract agreement that former council members worked very hard to achieve. Is this there are 3 pilot multifamily units for compost. So those are being established. One, I would like to say, is at the Marin Town and Country, which is most appreciated. And so these are up and running, and it will take time to establish a system that actually can be replicated and used in other multifamily and also in the other commercial businesses. And as the program at Central Marin Sanitation Agency is up and running, and you're able to take food there for the food to energy program, I think we will make much more brisk progress. So these things are going now, and it's much to the credit of a lot of hard work between both Marin Sanitary and this town council. Thanks.
That's great. Yes, Barbara.
Maybe this is for Garrett. Under the fiscal impact, talks about implementation and monitoring costs associated with the ordinance. The town would accrue those costs, and do we have any estimate of what those costs are?
I actually have no idea what those costs would be.
And I was just trying to envision what our role would be in that.
I think at the time in writing that, I think it had to do with implementation and enforcement. If we actually had to go and enforce and notify, that would take time, but it's difficult to say at this time until we actually have a specific case.
I have one more question. So just looking at the ordinance, there's a section on liability which looks good to me, where we're trying to exempt ourselves from Superfund liability, I suppose, for sending stuff to a landfill. But I'm wondering if we are limiting ourselves too much by not adding RCRA, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act of 1976, or any state laws such as Chapter 6.8 or Chapter 6.5 of the California Health and Safety Code. Now, just putting this in doesn't necessarily mean we won't be gone after at some point in the future, but if we do this, I just thought we might be limiting ourselves a bit. So I just wonder if that's something we should add, or maybe I'm over the top.
I'm not familiar with the sections that you just quoted, so.
I can just, so the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act is the federal law that deals with solid waste and hazardous waste. And Chapter 6.8 is the California Health and Safety Code state Superfund statutes. So California can also come after you. And then Chapter 6.5 is the statutes for solid and hazardous waste under California law. So usually the big one we worry about is Superfund and that CERCLA. I just didn't know if we'd want to put a few more things in there just to make it a little more bulletproof.
I'm just looking at the provision. It says no, it specifies that the multi-unit housing and commercial businesses would use franchised haulers and authorized recyclers.
Okay, I'm looking at C, liability, which is near the end.
What page is it on?
Well, there's no page number, so unfortunately it's
130-12, C, liability, yeah.
Well, I guess I would ask a similar question to the last item, is that what kind of materials are there available for people, you know, whether it's a commercial business owner or an apartment building owner, to comply with this? I mean, so that they have the knowledge in order to do this, so that they're not putting their foot in it.
Well, I mean, I can respond to that in that the town has a contract with Sustainable Fairfax, who is doing the outreach and partnering with Marin Sanitary with outreach materials, and actually in 3 model businesses putting together recycling systems and assisting them in ordering the product and then implementing the systems. Marin Sanitary is supplying signage, which has been designed and customized actually for our town and for our purposes here. And so, you know, those are on the ground support systems for people who are needing to comply, and then the others that we're encouraging to comply, so that we can actually start to capture commercial recycling and ultimately, and hopefully soon, commercial green waste.
Okay. Under
Sounds
the
excellent.
under the liability thing, just put a period after employees. The state can always exempt itself. Those who disagree can come after the state for its decisions, but if we would just simply want to absent ourselves from liability, we can simply absent ourselves from liability. And those who wish to challenge it can certainly come after us. But Barbara's exactly right. By simply just putting circular without the suite of relevant environmental statutes is a little under-inclusive.
Makes sense?
I mean, can I just say, I mean, I would be a little more comfortable if we put this one over until our next meeting. I mean, it's kind of a major step, and with Barbara's comments, and the other thing that's not clear to me is how do we implement, what are the tools of persuasion that are going to be used to implement it? What's the enforcement going to be? So I'm just, obviously I favor going forward with it. I just would like to be a little more confident about some of the bells and whistles in this ordinance, because it's a long one, and it's going to affect a substantial segment of our communities, so.
The interesting piece, and I'm in agreement with you, I think the more we talk about it and the more we bring this to the public and the more we flesh out the answers to some of these questions, the better, actually. I mean, we've been needing to set this up for a long time, and we'll continue.
Yeah.
But I don't actually know how broad and how wide the implications are for our actual businesses here, because there are not that many that are actually required to comply.
Yeah, but
I mean, I understand.
It's important to know.
I don't understand all the liability piece, and I agree that it needs to be looked at far more carefully. But we can look and see exactly who needs to be outreached to, and what it will take for them to comply.
Yeah. That sounds good. Yes, Barbara?
I mean, I have some more detailed questions. Like, for example, out where I live, there's 99 units, and I'm not sure that they're prepared. So maybe if we bring it back, it would be good to kind of work out some of these issues, since, I want us to do it where I live too, but I just want to make sure that we are prepared, and maybe we can flesh out some of these other things.
Yeah, I think implementing it and just getting it to where are just folding it in and not just hammering people with some new, bureaucratic requirements from up.
And also, just to clarify, I mean, we're talking about commercial recycling. We're not talking about commercial composting. I just want to clarify for the record that is rather, not, that's not where we are yet. So I agree, but I do think it's achievable. And we do have the resources to do it.
I think it's just getting comfortable with it so that we kind of know exactly what we're doing. And, we've been talking about it a long time, but reducing it to an ordinance is a little different, so.
Yeah. I'm all for forethought. I'd like to also open it up to public comment.
Michael McIntosh. As Renee pointed out, I'm one of the beta test sites for the composting, but even in a bigger picture, because I realize you guys are sitting up there, so I am that end user. So I'm the person that's used their services in 10 years on this property for taking out things that are contaminated and questionable and all kinds of different materials. And I can tell you that if somebody takes the time, as I've done, and call them and say, one time I said, okay, I've got all this material that's been contaminated, old soil, and I don't want it on my property. And so then Dave will say, okay, what do you think it is? And I tell him, then he provides the adequate box, and then he knows directly where to take it. When I've taken stuff out from the buildings, whether it be roofing or like different types of metals, or like when I bought the property, there were piles of batteries in the back. When I've called Marin Sanitary Service, they've asked me what it was. They provide the adequate box, or sometimes like a couple of small boxes, and they take it away. So as long as you can reach out and tell them what you have, I found them to be more than accommodating, and even trying to give me a better price since I tell them what the box is containing. As for the reaching out to the community, I can tell you that they're as good as my mom, if you want to say something like that. Jennifer has been on top of it. I mean, Steve and everybody came out to tour the property, and when they toured it, they really looked at, okay, where are people going to recycle these things for the green composting? How can we do this? And then they accommodated us by moving the cans around so people would really understand it. They take the time to look in the cans and say, hey, Mike, tell your tenants that, you can't be mixing these things up. Said, leave that container out so I could point this out to people. And as for the customization, they've actually printed up Word documents for me and then let me custom them for my tenants to actually say, call them friends and say Marin Town and Country Club to reach out, so I could give them to all my tenants. And then after I did that, then they came back and even printed a color one so all my tenants could have for a reminder, as well as taking their time, their initiative, and putting signs like on the bigger cans next to smaller cans to educate my tenants on what to do. And so with that outreach that I didn't ask for, I mean, they've just provided this, they've helped train people, because as a whole, people want to do the right thing. And they have given us the tools you're asking about, so we can do those things pretty seamlessly. I mean, they provide a service that is almost seamless, and it's achieved far more recycling than I could ever hope. Thank you.
Very encouraging to hear. Is there any other comments from the public?
Thank you very much for that very kind comment. I just wanted to introduce, we now have a new staff member, Chance Shelley. He comes to us from the AmeriCorps program. He will now be in charge of commercial food to energy, but will also be working with commercial businesses on recycling, which will free up Jennifer, because she's found her niche. She's very, very good with multifamily units and all the challenges that happen there. So that will be her focus and her expertise. And as we like to say now, our goal is to educate, equip, and empower people to do the right thing and divert it. We don't want to just tell you what to do anymore, give you some pictures, and leave it up to you. We really want to give you the tools to set you up for success and then empower you to continue it. And we have Steve Rosa here also, who's always a great source of help, resource for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess we are continuing this item.
Can I just say
Yes.
one thing before you do? Looking at the liability section, I mean, I didn't read that I didn't interpret that to think it meant only CERCLA. Nothing in this article shall be deemed to impose any liability upon the town or upon any of its officers or employees, including without limitation under CERCLA. So I thought that was somewhat illustrative. It's added in there. You can certainly we can add a whole list of other things to it. I'm always afraid when we start listing other things that we're going to miss something, and the longer your list, the more you're left with the thought that it's an exhaustive list, and it's just illustrative. So.
And comment, I mean, when I read including without limitation under CERCLA, that means to me, having done that for years, that it's just CERCLA.
Really?
I think if you said something like including but not limited to CERCLA and a few of the others that are kind of key, it still may not protect you ultimately, but...
No, that's true. But I just didn't read that as meaning only CERCLA.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Great. Well, at this point, I would very much like to move along to approval of response to the grand jury report garbageology in Marin. What? Oh, move to continue? I'm sorry. I would entertain a motion to continue it, but
I'd make a motion to continue item...
Is that proper?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Item 14 to the September meeting.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, Kohler, second Bragman, to continue this item. All in favor? Aye. Aye. That's unanimous. And now we'll move on to 15, approval of response to grand jury report garbology, not garbageology. Garbology in Marin wasted energy. Town manager.
Again, the grand jury issued this report in May 24th. We had 90 days to respond. They only asked us to respond to recommendation number 5. Met with the Zero Waste Committee and developed the response that's attached, and we're recommending that you accept that response and we could send that into the grand jury.
Is there discussion on this item? Do you want to?
Yeah, actually, as I've read and reread this, I just want to ask for clarification on the piece that states, however, the current agreement allows the town the option to request a proposal from MSS to redirect all or part of the compostable component of the waste stream to a facility in Marin County if one was permitted during the term of the agreement. Can you just alliterate on that a little bit?
Sure, what I did, and one item is there's a supplemental for this, so that you may have the corrected version. I don't know if you have
It
it.
still had that clause. I checked
Yeah,
that
the
out.
clause is still in there,
That-
but
that's what I
corrected
wanted
Phil. Yeah,
further.
the clause we took right out of the MSS agreement. It's almost verbatim, the wording as it relates to directing to another facility.
So Larry, would you speak to it?
That was a hard-fought clause in that agreement. And basically, the issue was that the green waste and organics are now getting shipped, I don't know, it's probably about 140 miles to Zamora. And so there was a trade-off of processing green waste in the way, in commercial compost process against the amount of carbon that you're burning to do that. So it's like, does this really make sense? And we actually, this whole agreement got hung up for probably a year on this clause because Fairfax insisted on having the option of effectively directing the flow to a local facility if one became licensed. And so this is a point is recommended really by the grand jury, which we had already really captured in the franchise agreement, which we entered into a couple years ago, I guess it is now. So that's kind of where things stand. There are no licensed facilities, unfortunately, in Marin County at this point. But if there is, we'll be ready. So that's what that refers to.
Well,
Did that make sense, or?
Yes.
it totally makes sense,
Yeah,
yes.
you don't need any more.
I'll go on, it's only 10 of 11. Sorry. Okay, well, I'd entertain, public comment? Hearing none. I'll close public comment. Is there any other comment from the council here? I would entertain approval, yes. Is there a second?
No, second.
Okay,
I'll
so
second.
we have a motion, Bragman, second Goddard, all in favor of
Aye.
approval?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous.
We're going to be in trouble with the grand jury again.
We're going to be in trouble with the grand jury. Because we already did what they recommended? Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, they're used to it. Number 16 is adoption of policies for filling vacancies on boards and commissions. Gary, you want to take this one?
So we had this on the agenda last meeting, and we had some more discussion from the council. And what we did as staff, we tried to incorporate what the council said into some written policy, which is here in the staff report. What we did for town boards and commissions is that we kept the provision that they attend at least one meeting of the town board and commission, and that commission, if they'd like, could provide their input to the council related to the applicants. Input not being a recommendation, kind of look at the strengths and weaknesses and see how well they would fit on the committee. We also created a provision that applications are due the Thursday, 5 p.m. Thursday prior to council meeting, so we could put it on in the agenda packet and we wouldn't have last minute applications for the council. We said if we get more than 3 applications for a certain vacancy on a board or commission, then that respective board or commission could narrow it down to 3 and then send it out to the council for interviewing. And we also included the policy that the council at its discretion may just appoint an alternate to fill a regular vacancy on a board. And that's what for towns, boards, and commissions, artists and residents. What we said was that one approach would be for Park to just limit it to 3 applications. In other words, Park would send forward 3 if they receive more than 3 applications, it would send those 3 applications on to the council for consideration, along with their input as to strengths and weaknesses of each candidate. If it was only 3 applications, Park could still interview the candidates, send on their input, but the council would still interview at least up to 3 applicants for artists and residents. Some variations of that is, you could have Park actually interview the candidates to actually make a recommendation or rank the top 3 for the council. So there's different variations, but in essence, the top 3 would just come to the council for interview and appointments with recommendations or input, I guess, from the Park. And then Planning Commission.
In artist in residence, second paragraph, another approach is for Park to interview applicants and just make one recommendation. In other words, the existing policy.
That's what we did last time. I'm sorry, missed that. Planning Commission, because it has a greater responsibility, staff will establish a deadline for applicants to apply rather than a first come, first served basis. And then one of the things we talked about is we would ask the applicant to attend a Planning Commission meeting. Planning Commission would not interview the applicant. They would just be attending just to see how it operates. And if 2 or more applications for a vacancy are received, the council may choose to conduct an informal, I call it an informal interview because it wouldn't be at a meeting per se. Be before the meeting, it could be a special meeting, just be interviewing them and then make the appointment at the regular council meeting. So that's in talking what we thought we heard the council say in this discussion, but it'd be important to let us know if that indeed is what you'd like to adopt and what variation of the artist in residence you would like to adopt.
On this. On the Planning Commission one, I think Barbara and I had a little colloquy about it last time. The older way seemed to go pretty well where we had time before the hubbub of a meeting to have a more relaxed conversation with all prospective candidates and then make a selection during the public hearing. The conversation with the applicants would also be open, but then we would make the decision, as we always do, in open session. That way, that gives us much more time, a little less under the Klieg lights of the moment, to actually explore and have a good conversation with those who would like to participate. On the artist in residence, I still feel extremely strongly that the existing approach of let Park interview the applicants, make a recommendation, and then that applicant comes to us, and if we feel that he or she is, meets the criteria, then we say yes and no. The idea of having all of the applicants, bring in their artwork or however they want to express themselves, and then having us, I can only speak for myself in saying I'm uniquely unqualified to determine whether artist A is better than artist B or is a better teacher, even though I am married to one, and that's 80% of the conversation that we have around the dinner table. I still feel extremely uncomfortable in that regard. So on those 2 matters, I would say those are my feelings. As to the other stuff, I think the approach evidenced in the staff report is accurate.
I think the last bullet of the Planning Commission, maybe I wasn't clear, but I think it's not necessarily if there's 2. I think we would, my feeling is that regardless if there's even 1, to have the opportunity for a more informal interview. It's possible that the council could decide with 1 applicant that it's not the right fit. And so an informal, so that last bullet that says if more than 2, I would just say for any applicants, this would be my suggestion. And then we would have an informal interview, and I think the way I understand it, we would still want that to be an open meeting. It would just not be that we'd be on the, yes, but we would be more down there. Yeah. So I think that's all fine, except for, I think it would even be for 1 applicant that we would have that informal interview. And I would say on the artist in residence, as long as I'm speaking, I like the first paragraph where Park is providing input to the council on the strengths and weaknesses of the 3 applicants. I don't know about formal criteria, but really that they're giving you what they feel the strengths are of the 3 applicants makes sense to me. But that's all I have to say. And otherwise, I think the other approach for the town boards, committees, and commissions, the rest of it, just for the other stuff, sounds great to me.
Yeah, I'm right there, but I also do want to reiterate my support for the first option in the artist in residence. I think it's a very important position. I think each person that comes, each candidate brings something completely different. Some are more teachers, some are more artists, some are more community-minded, sculptors, or some want to be in the creek doing zero waste sculptures, and we should know who these people are that are out there. We don't have to be artists or teachers in order to understand who we would like to creatively represent and sort of, rally our community that way. So I would like very much to meet them, and I think that they deserve the respect of our council in order to have the opportunity to stand and present who they are and what they want to bring to the community. And the rest of the pieces I'm good with and defer to your expertise in the Planning Commission appointments.
Larry?
I agree with Barbara and David on the informal interviews. I've always favored that. This recommendation actually includes making an appointment at the next council meeting after the interviews. I'm not sure about that. That's how San Anselmo does it, I think. So for whatever that's worth, I think they do kind of do a bifurcated interview process. Whether we would do that or not, I mean, that's attractive to me because you're not immediately sort of forced to jump to a decision right after you've talked to somebody. It gives you a little time, which I like. And then on the artist in residence, I agree with Renee. It's a unique position here in Fairfax. I don't know if there's any other town that really sponsors an artist in residence. And the last go round we had, there were 3 completely different approaches to the position. And I do think it's the type of thing where it really is somewhat important for us to at least have some input on the direction for that position. The last time the last 3 candidates, we had 1 painter, 1 video production and digital production type of proposal, and then the 3rd proposal was more oriented towards teaching and outreach, and it just more youth oriented. I kind of got from her. So I like the idea of them sort of culling it to 3 and then us interviewing.
Can I just add
the top 3?
That's what I agreed to as well. I wasn't saying anything different.
Okay.
I'm saying the first part of it where they're bringing you the 3 with their strengths and then we make the decision.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the first part of it. So I'm not in disagreement with you all.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. And for myself, I also feel strongly that the artist in residence, probably top 3 candidates. I mean, you don't want to go through 15 and, and obviously there's a thing. But my experience with the different people that have had the artist in residence gig here it's a completely different program depending on who's doing it.
Right.
And really just in the same way that it's the council's responsibility to shape the planning commission so that it is balanced and serves the needs and represents all the different factions of Fairfax. It's our responsibility also to kind of shape the resources available to the community and what we sense is out there. Just to kind of say, well, I've actually got an art degree, so I feel qualified somewhat, as much as anybody with an art degree would, because it's a very subjective sort of thing. And really, the artist in residence thing is not so much about what kind of art you make or whether it's even good art. It's how you interact with the community and how, what kind of program grows out of that. How does that build a community? Because really, that's what artist in residence is about. We've just had a very good experience with Sam and Shoshana. They did all kinds of outreach, and we got a lot of interesting theater things out of it, and interesting ceramics and murals and all kinds of things. But as many people do, they burn out, and it's time for something new. So, we'll see what that's like, but I don't think we should absolve our responsibility of helping to influence that, because that's what we're elected here to do. In terms of the Planning Commission, I think that the informal thing to begin with is a very good format, because you can get a feel for people It's an important choice. And so that would lend itself to that, you know, a bifurcated thing makes sense probably in terms of public process. And the recommendations in general for the TBCCs, I haven't heard them called that, all our plethora of volunteers sitting on various committees. But I think that makes sense to have a structured thing like that. It takes the best of different things we've learned to date. So.
Good, let's have 2 votes.
2 votes?
Yeah, because I don't agree with you on the artist in residence, so we have to take a separated vote.
Okay. I would entertain. Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. It's getting late. Yeah.
For the appointing of all the positions, I really do like a democratic process where we all have an opportunity to vote, because although the 5 of you are the council and the 5 of you are making some of the collective decisions, it's very nice when the general public can actually weigh in on that. And I think that if you guys applied this to like Plan Bay Area, I think you'd all agree. For the artist, I actually think it's really good to diversify our art programs and have things that are different, but by that same token, I would like the council on that one to almost weigh in more than some of the other ones, because I think that whatever the art might be, I think the actual outreach to the public is the most important aspect of that. And I really do like what Shoshana and Perry, or that's his last name, what they did. I thought they did a wonderful job.
Thank you. No comments? Okay, then I'd like to close the public comment and entertain a motion. Or 2.
So if I could just try to craft it quickly, I would move that we adopt for the artist in residence. Well, okay, let me start with for town boards, commissions, or town boards, committees, and commissions, that we adopt the council interview and appointment process suggested by staff for artist in residence, that we adopt the approach for Parks and Recreation to interview applicants and refer and rank, maybe, okay, rank. Maybe just
No, I
refer,
think strengths and
refer the
weaknesses.
top 3 for the
Yes.
council to consider along with criteria used. Well, okay, I'm gonna cut out the ranking.
But Larry, if you do this without dividing them into 2 or 3, then you're putting me in the position of not being able to disagree on artist in residence, but agree on the other 2.
All right, then we'll make, how about if I do, let's do it this way. On towns, boards, committees, and commissions, I would move adoption of the staff recommendations. On the Planning Commission, I would move adoption of the format that the council conduct an informal interview prior to the council meeting and then make an appointment at the next council meeting, with the proviso that the informal interview be a public meeting, be publicly noticed.
And it applies to
process.
all applicants.
Pardon me?
All applicants, whether you have 1, 2, or
Yes,
5. Okay.
yes.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion as spoken by Larry Bragman and a second Weinsoff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous. And in terms of the artists in residence,
I would move that we adopt the approach of having the Parks and Recreation Commission interview applicants and refer the top 3 to the council to consider for appointment.
Can I add, I think in the first paragraph, it also includes Park would provide input to the council on the strengths and weaknesses of the 3 applicants and the criteria by which a selection should be considered.
I take that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if we should do
Yeah, I
the
don't know.
criteria, but I do like that they would recommend and discuss strengths and weaknesses, because we may have different ideas of criteria that I don't want to be held to.
So maybe my friendly amendment could instead be park could provide input to the council on the strengths and weaknesses of the 3 applicants, period.
Sure.
Okay. So, do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, so we have the motion, Bragman, second Kohler. All those in favor of this?
Aye.
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 No.
Okay.
Current program, I would support the current program, it's worked well for a decade or so.
Okay, well, it's 4-1, Winesoff in the negative. And this brings us to the conclusion of our regular council meeting.
Move adjournment?
And open up discussion. Yes, so we have another one right after this. So we have a motion for adjournment. Second, Bragman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and so now we open up our, is this a continued special meeting of the town council? And this continues, this continues the one from Monday, yes. And do you want to launch into it?
Yes, okay.
What's our
the first
status?
item on the agenda is actually consideration of a conflict waiver for the property owner's attorney. And I have copies of it here. You want to pass them? Thank you. If you'd like to take a few minutes and read it. This is a proposed waiver letter for property owner's attorney. Did you get one of these? This is for her plus one, yeah. So I have, when everybody's ready, just let me know. Okay. I just
Okay.
have a couple of things to point out about this. We have no information that Mr. Rowland has obtained confidential information about the town, but in an abundance of caution, we thought this would be appropriate. And notice also that it is limited to representation of Mr. McIntosh in negotiations with the town on a right of entry agreement. So it is just for this particular item. It's not blanket for everything in the future. It's just for this item. So you could possibly have another chance to consider this for additional or other items if those ever materialize. Are there any questions?
Just a little historical footnote. The letter says he represented us in and around 2005. I actually think he represented us in years succeeding that, because he represented us in the flood litigation that was brought after the 2005-2006 events. So that litigation, Fairfax was in that lawsuit for probably 2 years before it was dismissed. As far as confidential information is concerned, we did meet in closed session with him at least on one occasion that I recall. So aside from that, I think it's appropriate to waive it in order to expedite what we're trying to do with the current project so that we can move forward. So
And that is
favor it.
my recommendation as well.
Any other further comment by?
Just one question. So since we would be signing this as of today, how does that work if he was working with Mr. McIntosh 3 days ago? Does this provide that?
We're waiving any objection we would have to the representation for this matter.
Okay, thank you.
You know, and it's a practical matter. I just, you know, it's not a formality. I mean, it is a substantial issue for lawyers to avoid conflicts, but I feel pretty comfortable that it's probably in everybody's best interest to do it so that we can move forward.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And the matter, you know, was related to water, but it's different enough.
I think we just got to do it.
Yeah,
and
I think
move
it's
forward.
fine. Okay, I would open it up for public comment. You want to say?
The document may misspeak because you're correct. His representation was actually through the county for all the different communities, which included Fairfax as a result of the 2005-2006 flood, to represent you guys, protect you guys from the lawsuit from Ray Voorhees. However, I actually think I signed a waiver with Gary because I've actually had their firm representing me since 2002. All the way back to the original documents and purchasing the property. And so honestly, if there's an issue where they can represent you that protects the town, I really think they're very professional, that they're not going to compromise me or the town. So even if that came up in the future, if I thought it was good for the town, I'd say go represent them. And although I appreciate the formality, I hope it's restricted to only a formality and that there is no future issue, because although the discussion here did imply that it's for this one thing, the firm has had an ongoing representation and they have been my counsel. I just generally try to do most of the interaction with the town myself because I hope eventually that we have a better conversation. So I would appreciate if you would accept this as a formality, but do please see it that really you could almost say you guys had a waiver since they represent me 3 or 4 years prior to your representation. Thank you.
Understood.
You want us to adopt this by motion?
Please.
I would move that we direct the mayor to sign the conflict waiver.
Okay, so we have a motion, Weinsoff, second Bragman. All in favor? Aye. I will sign it. Do you want me to sign this one?
No, I have an original down here.
Okay,
already.
that sounds good.
Better paper. Not.
Alrighty.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that the only
So,
matter?
we have a second matter.
Second matter on the agenda. So are we going to
Go to that.
continue that now? Okay. That was the continuation of the hearing for the nuisance abatement. But as staff, since the property owner has granted us acceptable access to the property, so staff is respectfully requesting the council allow staff to withdraw the nuisance abatement action for 40 Pastoria Avenue, APN number 002-131-11 and 002-131-10.
Please.
Yes.
Do we need any discussion at all? Have we talked about this?
You've had adequate opportunity
Yes.
to review the document that's been proffered tonight?
Yes,
You're comfortable?
I very carefully reviewed the signed right of entry agreement.
And that's the same document that you sent, that you delivered, the PDF?
Today.
Yeah. You're confident
I'm
about that?
confident of that.
Okay. I would, have you made the motion, or? I'll second it.
Do you want to have?
Oh, okay.
Larry, if, you know, I realize that there's so much trust for me that you feel you could just, you know, try to kick me, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find any place that I've told you about something that I haven't followed through, because believe it or not, I try very hard, and that's why there's an effort for, I'm very picky on the words, and Janet was extremely accommodating and very fairly working back and forth. So I would not try to swap something on you. If that was the effort, honestly, I'd be right in your face and tell you. So please do provide that same respect, because I wouldn't expect anything less than you. And I'm trying not to laugh too hard, but I did find that kind of comical. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have a motion, Weinsoff, second Bragman.
Right. To withdraw. Go
What?
ahead.
Can I just ask one question? Do we need to give Garrett authority to sign the right of entry agreement, or does he already have that?
It's set up for Garrett's signature, is the way we did it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's not.
Good point. No, good point.
Yeah, that's good.
Point. Good one.
Okay. So,
I offered to Janet. The one thing that I did offer on the right of entry agreement, as it's written, I think it might be too restrictive for your work area. And so one of the alterations that I offered was to extend it and to give you actually, it came out to about 120 more linear feet of area to work in a creek. And Janet was concerned that you might see it as Larry's comment of me screwing with something. But as I verbally told Janet, I do believe you'll need a larger work area, and I'm very happy to extend that to you if we stay within the spirit of the agreement. Because although the agreement and the footprint of this area is pictured, you'll need additional area to, like, for instance, swing a pipe, to bring your material, to get access so you can actually pull something over. And so it's going to have a larger scope of work. And I've offered that verbally to Janet, because I do want to see you guys succeed as I have for 7 years. Okay?
well, yeah, thank you. I think that's great, and in the spirit of moving forward to get this done cooperatively on all sides, I think let's, you know, whether that be informally there or whatever, should the contractor need that. That's great.
Got a motion? Can we vote?
Okay, so all in favor of approving this? Aye.
Aye.
Move adjournment of the special meeting.
All right, thank you, and I think we're adjourned, right?
Thank you.